morning, video games. Welcome to Filthy Casuals, a podcast about video games hosted by three very kind and extremely knowledgeable boys. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Tommy Daslow, and with me, as always,
one of the nominees for Worst Video Games Journalist of the Year, Ben Vanel here, and rounding out the trio, as always,
Adam Knox, a genuine category. I'm sure that a bunch of fucking people online in certain communities would be rabidly voting for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of them. Click, click, click.
Oh god, yeah. This guy disagreed with me one time. He's fucked.
Wokest game of the year in a negative
Shill.
sense. Shill of the year.
What a wonderful note to start the episode on, a celebration of the year.
No. And thankfully, all of our listeners are wonderful, delightful, positive people who enjoy talking about the good aspects of games. And that's what we're mostly here. 90% of this show will be about celebrating the games we enjoyed this year.
Absolutely. And going through and making a list of games from the year, did you all do the same method as me of open up that 2024 in video games Wikipedia page? Scroll
that is
down,
how I do it.
write every one that you're like, oh yeah, I'll write that down for later, make a short list, make your top 10, and then go, wait, what about fucking this thing? And realize you just skipped over like half the games in that list because you got so bored scrolling several times.
And then a lot of them are just like games that finally got released on a different platform. So you see a couple where you're like, well, that doesn't count as a game that came out this year. That just got released on the PlayStation this year. And so then you're scrolling because of that, and then all of a sudden you've left off like the biggest game of the year.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to be a judge.
It really is.
Wear that wig. But yeah, going through and making a short list and all of that. Some nice games looking back. A long year.
Yeah. It's a nice
year. A lot of big ones. A big year for JRPGs, especially as a genre. Lots of them coming out. Lots of 100-hour campaigns to get stuck into. We were just talking about some categories before we started recording, and we left off what I think the best gaming awards category of the year would be Best Switch 2 Rumor, because there were a lot of them. That is a long list to sift through because we had a new one every week.
That's true.
Yeah. I couldn't recall the majority of them too. Is the depressing thing about spending that much time talking about them is they slip into the ether almost straight away afterwards.
At a certain point, they became very crystallized and not much was really changing. More just like what the date is that's going to be announced. But yes, what are we on? 2 years now, at least, of speculate. People thought the NX stuff went on for too long, and
then it was the Switch Pro before that. So it's been 4 years of Switch hardware.
Yeah.
Properly sitting down and going like, will it be square again? Oh, well, rectangular.
What was your guys' favorite pre-announcement by a presenter or company declaring that there won't be anything very interesting in the upcoming presentation they're doing? Because there was a few of those.
Yep.
Those were pretty good. My favorite, I can tell you my favorite. This isn't a so we're gonna have some categories as we go through, as well as our just like personal favorite top 10 games. But yeah, one of the categories I might have put in if I'd have thought about it. Favorite game I was reminded got announced years ago and we haven't seen at all since.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Star Wars Eclipse.
Oh, sure.
By David Cage and Co. Whatever that company is called again. Remember that thing?
Yep. Is that Quantic Dream?
Yeah. That's them. Sitting there not making droids at the moment. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Tell him he's Quantic Dreaming.
Or tell him to the left and it'll be basically the same. But
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great Quantic Dream joke, man. That's some good
another good category would be favorite leak, favorite like way that something got leaked. Like I feel like we've done that maybe in the past, like something showing up on a retailer website by accident or something along those lines.
If it were more of a wrap of like the last maybe 5 years or so, favorite truckload of gaming equipment that got stolen. I think would be a lovely category to have.
Yes.
Playdate is probably a front runner for me.
Yeah.
So.
VR headsets is a good one.
Yeah.
I think PS5s at some point.
People be stealing.
Do we want to start this off? Get into our lists.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine, not to read ahead, but of course, Adam, I imagine your entire top 10 is made up of PSVR 2 games.
Let me have a quick look here. If I can squint at this list with my eyes.
Rifling through the papers.
It's hard for me to focus on things that are too far away with how much I've been using the PSVR 2.
Of course.
So
if you had have done this episode, if you had have had the your list written on the notes app within the VR 2 headset, and you were here on the call, just being like, now what was my number 8? Let me see.
at least I would have gotten some use out of the thing. That would have been a great idea.
Yeah, so Nox, you're master of ceremonies. Should we start with a category and then go into maybe our 10th favorite game?
Yeah.
After that,
let's roll things out. Please welcome to the stage Ricky Gervais to present the Wish I'd Had More Time Award, presented this year by the Men's Watches brands. The Men's Watches brand, Men's Watches for Men. Men's Watches for Men. Who Men's Watches for Men? The Men's Watches Men. I don't know if I've read that copy correctly. I certainly spent a long time trying to figure out the right way to write it down.
The right way to write.
Who Men's Watches the Men's Watches Men? I think, anyway, who gives a fucking shit?
And who watches the Watchmen?
Clocks.
Men's Watches.
Time. And we didn't have enough time to play every game. Seemed to make sense to go through and nominate some games we wish we'd have gotten around to a little bit more deeply or at all. Yeah,
I've got one that I know you liked, Nox, and I don't know, it might also be on your list, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I loved the style of it, and I was really, keen on playing another sort of adventure puzzle sort of game, but just got lost in the wash for me. And I'm definitely going to go back to it at some point.
It's a nominee. Hey, I'll hit that tennis ball back with a Black Myth Wukong, which I didn't put anywhere as much time as I would have liked to. But again, it's just one of those things where we've all got only so many hours in a day. And but that game seemed really cool, and I wish I'd have had more time thanks to menswatches.com or whatever that was.
Yeah, the Game Awards Game of the Year. Well, at this point when this is released, we'll know if it won or not, but it was one of the nominees. Tommy, do you have a game you wish you played more of?
I sure do. UFO 50.
Yes.
I loved what I played. I loved what was there. Very overwhelming by design, which I think is cool about it. And certainly if I was someone who didn't do this for a job and I was just going to get a game and that be my thing that I play for a few months, then I probably would have gone a little bit deeper. I loved every little shred of all the games in there that I tried, but yes, you really do need to, I think, just commit to one that you're really liking and kind of dig into that. And I just kind of found that very hard to do. I tried to play as many of them as I could in the week that we reviewed it. And then thinking about going back to it was just so overwhelming. But I was talking to a friend the other day who's played heaps of it, and he's got a couple that he was like, oh man, once you get a bit deeper into this one, it's fucking amazing. And this one's really, really great. He's like, it's the best thing I've played in so long. I've just been mainlining it, and it made me go, man, it's such a cool idea. Yeah, I want to put more time into that at some point.
It's a great one to drop in and out of, but I agree that it's pretty overwhelming. And the reality of being a kid in a candy store is that kid would get so overwhelmed and lie down on the ground and have a tantrum, which is a little bit of how it feels to try and confront that game.
Yeah, the kid would have a tantrum from being overwhelmed or eat so much candy that its stomach exploded.
Yeah,
which I
it
feel
would just fill itself up on the cola bottles and then regret having missed out on, Chameleon.
That's why it's good to grow up poor. So, like I did.
I
you go to the candy store, you have 30 cents, which means you can get 6 mates toffees and go home and be like, I really appreciate having these mates toffees.
That's very giving that you would spend your money on your mates toffees when you had so little.
That's right. I love to support small business.
As someone who came up with menswatches.menswatchesmen.com, I don't understand brand names, and so I assume you mean mates, as in friends. The one time I was actually a kid in a candy store equivalent, I was in a time zone. Right? The time zone in Frankston, Victoria.
This is an arcade, a franchised arcade for any overseas.
Exactly.
Listeners.
They would have like laser tag things there, but a whole bunch of arcade games. And I remember like I would sometimes go in there if like my parents were shopping or something at a certain age, and just walk around and look at the games basically and like pretend to play ones that were in demo mode. But I got on the MotoGP. And that bitch was working. It was on.
Hell
it
yeah.
kept being on, and it kept letting me have infinite credits.
Whoa.
And I sat there thinking that I'd like somehow gotten into this broken machine. Anyway, like 40 minutes later, when my parents came back, I realized every single arcade game in that thing was on free play for that hour for some reason, and I'd just been only playing one of my least favorites, the MotoGP game. It's fun to move that bike, but you don't need to do it for 40 anyway. Yep, good shout, UFO 50.
Yeah.
Quickly, a couple more for me. Persona 3 Reload, I just barely even touched because there was a ton. They put out 3 of those similar sorts of games this year, and I did play a bunch of Metaphor.
I played a fair bit of it, and as with all the Persona games, I think I did like the first dungeon, so I would have done like maybe 10-ish hours, which is a fair bit, but still felt like I was barely getting going, and as we talked about the other week, like a lot of these games, this genre, they all sort of start more or less the same, and at a certain point you just get a bit fatigued on it. But I would like to go back to it at some stage.
Like
that is the one good thing
Dragon,
about that genre is like it's very easy to come back to.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there's no time pressure to play a remake of a 20-year-old-ish game. Like that was part of the reason too. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth was very similar. And there's a few more, but the only other one worth mentioning, I think, is Helldivers 2.
Yes, that was on my list. I did actually end up playing it, but and like enjoyed it. I do remember saying like I don't really get why this has exploded more than all the very similar games, but it was a pretty like simple, streamlined, easy to play version of it, and like a fun aesthetic. And yeah, I'm sure I'll dip in on that over my summer break. But I also had Pacific Drive on mine because I really enjoyed it, and I just didn't play anywhere near as much of it as I had hoped to. Especially having sort of played Stalker 2 now, which is like such a similar setting. Like they're both like the zone. And Pacific Drive didn't have any bugs from what I remember, or at least not nearly as many.
It's pronounced Specific Drive.
Of course.
Ambulance Drive. Great. Well, we're not going to necessarily even have to award it to anyone. We just wanted to call out some specific things. They're not. These are just
some Pacific things.
Mention. It's pronounced Pacific Drives. So that brings us, I think, to our 10th favorite games of the year. Tommy, do you want to start, then Ben, then me, go in title order?
Sure. Well, my number 10 also doubles as like a category of my own, and the category is objectively like 7 out of 10 game overall.
Sick.
That just really did it for you specifically for some reason.
Some of the best games in the world.
Yeah.
You know it's not up there as a masterpiece, but there's just something about it that you had a good goddamn time playing. And that for me is my number 10 game of the year, Epic Mickey Rebrushed.
Now I was behind you. For the whole time. Yeah, no, fair enough.
Just a fun 3D platformer. I think it's I love the art direction. I always thought it was like such an interesting idea that this guy got, given the keys to kind of fuck around a little bit with this notoriously closed shop IP, I guess. I was always interested in it being locked on hardware where you needed the Wii remote to play it. I think having to use the waggle controls and everything was a thing that people didn't really respond to with it at the time. So yeah, seeing it kind of upscaled, and you can just really appreciate like the art direction that's in it, and it's just got none of those controls in it. It just plays like a normal 3D platformer, and yeah, it's not perfect, it's not a masterpiece, but I had a really fun time with it.
Dope. And it's named after back when people used to make a million jokes about like bizarre names of Urban Dictionary sex acts that no one actually does. You know what I mean? Epic Mickey has always given me that sort of vibe of name.
Oh yeah, right.
Go to the old Epic Mickey. Oh, right. Awesome sauce, man. God, I'm looking forward to 2010.
Well, my number 10 is also a fantastically 7 out of 10 game that everyone... I mean, it got shit on at the time, and I think people sort of viewed it as like the real, like the apotheosis of a certain kind of thing, and that game was Star Wars Outlaws. An extremely Ubisoft open world stealth action game, but I just fucking loved it. It harkened back to the first couple of Assassin's Creed games, which are old and dated now. But and you know, like there's a lot about Outlaws which felt dated to people and felt like, this has been done. But I loved those old games, and I wanted them to be done again exactly the same. And,
yeah, I think that's what, like with Epic Mickey, it was like it reminded me of like playing a Banjo-Kazooie back in the day.
No, don't compare my game to Epic Mickey rebrushed. I will not be tarred with that rebrush.
I'm sorry, Ben, but to an outsider's perspective, I'm hearing 2 Epic Mickey rebrushed.
Yeah, that's it, brother.
I'm hearing Star Wars Outlaws out of Tommy. I'm hearing Epic Mickey. It's all
Epic Yoda.
I mean, my equivalents are even higher up on the list, so neither of you need to.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I love this game, and it just fit my taste perfectly. It had the right amount of sort of side quests and like faction sort of playing off against each other. I always like that kind of stuff, the sort of like balancing, like I got to work for these guys to get this bonus fucking outfit, but I've upset these fellas over here, and you know, zooming through their territory on my speeder bike, I'm gonna get shot at. Like, I just really liked all those systems. I thought it looked great. It was one of the more enjoyable Star Wars things that I've, you know, dipped in on for a while, and yeah, it doesn't deserve to be any higher than 10th on a list, but I think it doesn't deserve to be on worst game of the year lists, which I've seen it appear on.
I think a bunch of people were also in a position that you weren't in, of like, I know you played like those 2 Jedi games, but I think you'd basically not been looking at anything Star Wars for 5 years or something other than that.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Outlaws came at a time when people, like, there was a show that people didn't like this year that I forget the name of, and people are at a real Star Wars, you know, high toxin level.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. It's and I don't have to persuade anyone else. And hey, I enjoyed it.
Every taste for the own man's tongue. Well, speaking of taste,
yes.
I've got 2 tasty games that kind of are tied for 10 based on a technicality. Because one of them I don't think I've really played enough of to actually put it in 10.
Okay.
But I think it will be there or higher. And the other one was the one that was initially there. So the one that isn't there technically is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I'm going to play that today as time of recording, which is several weeks before this episode comes out, which is a shame. But I've heard good things about it, and I've got it. I'm going to give it a crack. So yeah,
in the category of game that if it had come out earlier would have done better probably. Like December is too late often. Like most games that anyway. It's great,
also,
though. I'm loving it. And as you'd have heard me talk about 2 days from now, plus 2 weeks ago from now.
Yeah, it is weird that they kind of like dumped it in December, because it's like too late for any of the awards stuff and the press that gives a game.
It's not the sort of game that, like, you know, sometimes it'll be like, well, that's clearly people are wanting to get it as a gift or whatever. Makes sense to get it in right then. But this isn't that sort of game. It's something that people are just going to play on Game Pass or whatever.
It's still a touch buggy at the time of recording, so I can see why it maybe wasn't possible. But yeah, it's a shame because, you know, the games that come around this time, especially with like the Game Awards and stuff like that now get kind of considered that. It gets lost in the in the mix. But a game that came out at a hell of a time, around an April, May. My number 10 would have been Animal Well. But Indy, I think Indy's going to crack the old whip on that animal's back. And that animal's going to run off all yipe, yipe, yipe.
Yeah.
But it's a good game. Will we be talking about it more a bit later?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it wasn't higher for you, Nox. But then I guess, we did talk about it a few weeks ago. And I think, I remembered you saying like, it was good, but I've also kind of moved on from it.
I think all of these 10 are basically ranked in order of the ones that I keep thinking about. And speaking of thinking, we've thought of another awards category if you want to put on our tuxes again. Animal Well, I think will fit into this one. The next awards category we were going to present was the Uniquey for most unique game presented by Uniqlo. Uniqlo, where the clothes are too small. The nominees that I've got written down here, and I know that slogan doesn't apply to everyone, but it applies to enough people that it's a notable thing about that.
It applies to me. It applies to you, and
it really applies to me.
Yep.
I've been pissed off at that shop ever since they did those Final Fantasy T-shirts that I would have bought one of. Remember they did like all 15 or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
I reckon Animal Well was a pretty unique game. Along with, I've written down here, UFO 50.
Yeah.
Kinito Pet. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
The little desktop guy who haunted your computer.
Yes.
A lot of haunted software games have come out over the years, to be fair.
It's the new thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but not specifically Clippy.
No.
I didn't play much of one of these or any of the other, but I think, Ben, I'm going to suggest, would you like to nominate either Children of the Sun or Indica?
Well, I've got Children of the Sun for another category. So Indica, I really, really like it as a game. I don't know that it's like unique in the strictest sense. It is a third-person puzzle game, basically. Like, it really reminded me of the puzzle aspects and the exploration aspects of like a Resident Evil 2 and 3, like that kind of thing without the combat. But I think in terms of its approach to story and like the depth and the sort of intelligence of what it was looking at and the way it presented it was very unique. And then also some like weird interface stuff where it's like sort of immersive and sort of spooky and atmospheric, and then it'll be like a pixel art, like bonus symbol appears on the screen. So like, I think it's worth being in the discussion, especially since I haven't thought of anything else to put in this category.
Another that comes to mind that I just remembered you talking about earlier in the year, I think it was this year, Home Safety Hotline sounded pretty interesting.
That is, let's check if that was this
called?
year. Yeah. Home Safety Hotline come out last year.
Shit.
But I think I got to it this year. That was also sort of in the Kinito Pet haunted game interface. I guess it was like a Papers, Please almost, like a something creepy going on while you're staring at like an interface or a desktop or a Yeah.
And look, it's tough for any game to be unique. They all draw from each other, and I think that will maybe make or come to mind suggesting these two. But I genuinely think, UFO 50, I think, is such a unique thing in the scale of what it does.
Yeah.
But Balatro is a roguelike and a card game, which there have been tons of in the last few years. But the way it put that stuff together, like, kind of made something new. And I say that also in the fact that starting to play it, it took me a bit to sort of get it.
Yeah.
Even though it was immediately, like, accessible. And so, I don't know, I think Balatro fits.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, Children of the Sun is a great shout, actually, and I'd also put that in my wish I'd played more of it, because what I did play, I really loved, and I just totally, I had completely forgotten about it until you mentioned it just then, which, yeah. And, yeah, my two big ones are also kind of my 9 and 8 as well.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk about them in a second. And also, actually, genuinely, my technical number 10, I think Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is like, for as much as it's doing like a first person game with combat that does involve shooting sometimes, and it's sort of a Dishonored thing, and it's sort of an adventure game, and it's sort of a movie tie-in, and like all these things have been plenty of times. There's something about the way they've constructed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that does actually feel super unique. And as you'd have heard from me by now, but haven't right yet, so it's like one of the most interesting and well done adaptations of the vibe of a film without thinking about making it look cinematically exactly like how the movies are, other than the shot-for-shot remakes part of it in some of the cutscenes. But like,
right,
the kind of out of the box, I guess, thinking about it to be able to even get to the point where you're like, it should be a first person, like Dishonored style climbing game with weird little side quests and stuff. I think is a really like creative take on something that it has had a pretty defined format of like, well, it's in third person and you punch, and it's like Uncharted. Like to not make Uncharted when you're making an Indiana Jones game or Tomb Raider, I think is pretty creative, and you might even say unique.
Would you say, and this might be a little too far, that it belongs in a museum?
Brother, I reckon I'd have said that several times within the last 2 weeks with my eyes crossed.
I wasn't as big a fan of UFO 50 as you guys, but it is, I think I would be happy to say it's clearly the most unique game of the year.
I think so too.
I think so.
It's pretty fucking creative, yeah.
Look. In scope, and just like most, like as we said at the time, so many of those games in there, if they had have just dropped them for a couple bucks, probably would have taken off and had a lot of interest and been big on streaming. But the thing of, like as we said earlier, by design, making a deliberately overwhelming, quite difficult to scratch the surface of experience is like, it's so unique in that way of just like formatting it in a way that means that a lot of people are probably never going to experience the bits of it that they would really gel with. But just being so singular about like, no, this is the idea. It's this old fucked computer that someone's found, and you just get everything at once.
Starting with that stupid fucking egg game as number one. With the like, that is a crazy decision that is pretty unique. So, and it's the first game I wrote down and the reason I thought of this category. So, absolutely.
Yeah. But even the thing of going like, well, there's like you get like those little bits of story about like chronologically, this is like they're all in the order that this like fake company made them in.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the very first one would have been like very esoteric and off-putting, and
That's very cool. But is it anyone's 9th favorite game of the year? Probably. But is it any of the three of us's favorite 9th favorite? We'll find out. What did you have 9-wise, boys?
Okay, well, for number 9, I've got... so the number 9 and number 8 are also part of their own subcategory.
Okay.
And I also have an honourable mention for this subcategory. So,
all right.
Games that I played during a period where I had maybe the worst flu I've ever had in my life.
Okay.
And
classic award show.
Yeah.
Did enjoy them a lot and think they're really good games, but then every time I like remember the experience of myself playing them, it makes me feel physically unwell to the point where I'm like, do I actually like these games or not?
Right. and I can never go back and play them again.
That is the fear of show 24 for me, 100%.
Right.
Yeah. One of them I finished, and then the other two are like, I'm kind of near the end, and I just have not been able to bring myself to pick them up again because they are sort of tainted by bad memories, even though the games themselves are really great. So the honorable mention one is Mini Shoot Adventures.
Oh yeah,
the little kind of shmup flying around, 2D Zelda kind of thing, hybrid. Really love that. But my number 9, Dungeons of Hinterberg. The sort of Zelda dungeony, real-time combat, getting little powers in each biome, and then leaving the dungeon and having this kind of Persona-style time management, building up your social stats to get different powers. I just loved the look of it. Like, the art design is great. It just really, I think it's because I do think it's also such a unique blend of these different styles of game, and I don't know, for whatever reason, it didn't really feel like it it reviewed well, but it just didn't feel like it really grabbed people in the way that I thought it might. But I personally, all of that being said, a big part of the reason why I was able to sink so much time into it at the time was because I was in bed with the flu. So,
I got the impression, tell me if I'm off base, you talking about that has put me back in mind of when you had that flu. And I'm also being like, oh, yeah, that did suck, because that's when we tried to record that episode that didn't record properly, and then we couldn't do it, and then you were too sick to be able to do it again. And
that's right.
Remember that?
Yep.
So fuck Dungeons of Hinterberg. That's when we would have talked about it. But like Genshin Impact and games like that, I think a lot of the people who are into those might have been into what it sounds like Dungeons of Hinterberg was, and maybe didn't look at it because they're so into those. I don't know if that's maybe off base.
I think there was a lot of stuff about like the original trailers that made it seem like a roguelike, which I initially was like tuned off on it, and then finding out more about it that it's like, no, they're all like design. It's like a good single player campaign. I reckon it might be, of everything on my list, I think it's the one that kind of feels the most slept on overall. I didn't really hear anyone talk about it. It's on Game Pass. Check it out if you didn't already.
I still have this thing with it where it's like, I just can't picture it as a game. It's like one of these things where it's like, it's like the kind of idea you would have for a game when you were like 13 and you didn't realize how hard that would be to actually make. It's just like, what about a dungeon crawler game where then you go into the world and you can like talk to people and you develop relationships and you get special powers.
They should do GTA, but you can go in every building and everyone's walking around and going to work and they all have their own lives. And,
But that kind of like wild concept, and it's like, and it sounds like appealing and fun, but I could never get into it because I just could never picture how it would actually play.
And refusing to learn by playing.
Yes.
I think that's the thing, though, like with a lot of things, when you're right, like when you hear the concept and it sounds too unwieldy to be able to execute on properly, but then in practice, like the stuff that you're doing in between the dungeons, it is that very Atlas style thing where you're not really in an open world. You're choosing these little areas to go to, and in fact, it even simplifies it further, where you can just go into the menu and go, I want to go talk to this person, and then you'll teleport there, and then you choose to. So what it essentially boils down to is you do your dungeon, and then it's like, here's a list of things that you can build up. Which one do you want to do? Like it, like obviously the packaging of it makes it seem, more grander.
Right.
But in effect, it's like it actually is quite a simplistic.
Yeah.
You get in and you're like, oh, this is sort of way more controlled than what it sounded like.
It sounded cool. It's always been one of those interesting ones where it has like the vibe of something I just forget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Van Helsing, the movie, like those sorts of things where it's like, I'm sure they put a lot of effort into that, but it's just like, just washes over you.
I'll also say I don't love the title, and that is another thing that I think,
But, you've always spoken highly of it, and I'd love to play it one day.
Yeah. No, you breaking it down like that so simply, Tommy, makes it sound shit, and I'm never going to play it. Unlike my 9th game of the year, a game that was meant to lead Xbox into number one position for the console wars. It was their big game they'd been advertising for years. It was, of course, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2?
Hellblade 2. Was it Hellblade 2 Senua's... Fuck knows.
No, it was I'm pretty sure, because it was...
You might be right, because Helldivers 2 and Hellblade 2, I kept saying the wrong one.
The first one is called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Right, and then they flipped it for some reason.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely bizarre.
Let's just remember that a moment ago, this man was saying that he didn't play Dungeons of Hinterberg because the title sounded shit.
Well, Senua's Saga really draws you in because you have to figure out what the title is. It's really engaging.
Yeah, you gotta say a lot of S's in a row. It makes you feel like a snake. It's fun.
Senua's
Saga.
Do you want to hear a fun fact about my top 10? 10, 9, 8, and 7 all start with S.
Oh.
Wow. That is a fun fact.
Yeah.
Where'd you read that? On the lid of a Spring Valley juice bottle?
Someone's been using their maxi pads.
But
fun facts like that.
This was such a pleasant surprise. Like, I think... like the first game I enjoyed, but it was quite simple, and there were aspects where if it didn't hit, it just was not going to appeal to you at all. And then I feel like they improved a lot of it, but they also showed off like the incredible facial capture and motion capture and performances, and had a fucking really good, thoughtful story that was presented in like we talked about it at the time. Not just a cinematic way, because that is, like that's what games tend to lean towards for presentation in a sort of like a mature way. This incorporated the interactivity of a video game in a really, really good way that enhanced it and made it actually immersive. I had a great time experiencing the story. Was there a lot of gameplay? No. But I also like walking simulators if the story is good enough as well. So, I really enjoyed this game. It was my 9th favorite game of the year.
I came around to it a lot more than the first one for sure. And I think they and the technical stuff is like beyond reproach. It is incredible the stuff they were able to make those digital faces do.
Yeah.
Blinking and squinting and going, and every single one of the expressions lined up with the cards I've got hanging on my wall. Like, it was very, very impressive. And a lot more fun than that first one.
Yes.
Like, it was still a heavy story and whatever, but they did a lot better job of telling that in a way that was also enjoyable to be a part of.
Yeah.
Or like, not dreary. It wasn't dreary. It was more creative.
Yeah.
I've got sort of the opposite game as my number 9.
Okay.
My number 9 game of the year is Stellar Blade.
Oh!
Which I don't think you could have more opposite tonally games than Hellblade 2 and Stellar Blade.
Yeah.
Other than Blade being in both titles. Yeah, this one really surprised me. I thought it was going to be a piece of shit for some reason. And then it had really enjoyable, tight combat that felt fun as hell to do. It had these fun, large areas to explore and do side things in. It had sort of a goofy story that I guess I didn't really care about that much. But I thought the sort of...
It was very anime series story of like, hey, here's a setup, here's a setting. Now, here's some some interesting characters along the way, and some of the world building stuff was like kind of cool.
Some of the side stuff for sure. Yeah, I got and just the sort of vibe of all of that was good.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't like my favorite part of that game, I just ended up really it was just a really competently made and like fun to play and kind of a thing that it was a page turner, whatever the equivalent of that for a video game would be, a button presser.
It was
continue playing. It was I barely know it. It was fun. I ended up having a good time and enjoying the way that those weapons felt to use.
You know what I think a good...
And the
what's
tits!
the equivalent of...
No, I, like that aspect of it, I'm glad was sort of not something that when you actually played the game, it seemed like they were like, see, get a load of this. It was a lot less than the sort of discussion about that, but it's still kind of weird.
The equivalent of the page turner, I guess, would be if your controller battery dies, rather than turn the console off and just put the thing on charge, you will sit up against the TV with the cord plugged into the console, draining battery from that. That is the mark of like, I'm loving this game so much that I will be physically uncomfortable while I'm playing it, rather than
I don't love it enough that I'll find a longer USB cord. That's not going to happen.
No.
That's only once in a generation. Yeah, cool. Well, we've all got a 9, and I'll tell you what, we've all got a lot of big game from this year.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they call him the king of hosting. Our next awards category, if you so please, is Mr. Big's Prize for Size, sponsored by Mr. Big from Sex and the City. Just in general, I don't think he has a product to spruik, but this is not necessarily just objectively the biggest game, or else this would be a very easy category to talk about. But like, there were a bunch of games that came out this year where I felt, holy shit, this is massive. In a fun way, not in a daunting way. So the ones I've got written down here are Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Metaphor ReFantasio, and Dragon's Dogma 2 to kick us off.
Well, Infinite Wealth is definitely the one that came to mind for me. It's like big in like physical space you can walk around, but the fucking scope of that game is ridiculous, as it was with the previous game. The inclusion of all of these mini games and sub games that have so much depth of their own. Like,
it's got a whole Animal Crossing mode
exactly
in there that's entirely optional.
Yeah, the fact that I spent probably 5 to 7 hours just playing that part of the game, it's insane. It's an incredible, it's incredibly big, as this category would say.
The fact that they are able to put so many of those games out, as they do, and like smaller ones in between or whatever, but their output is some of the strongest that any company is able to do, because the quality seems to be there to the point. But like, yeah, that game is big enough that I struggled to get very far in it because it kept seeming so big.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it.
It was a good year for if you're someone who only has the budget or time or whatever to buy 1 or 2 games a year. There are a lot of games this year that you could pick them, and that's going to have you sorted for months, especially if you're someone that likes to do everything in a game.
Well, the one that I sort of dropped Like a Dragon in favor of was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which, especially when that first game was no slouch, but, you know, was more normal.
More linear.
Yeah. The way that Rebirth kept unfolding as well, and the way it introduced its scope over time in a sort of surprising way, where it kept giving you that feeling of like, holy shit, this is even bigger than this, like 4 or 5 times during that game. That was fucking cool. And so much of the stuff to do in it as well was genuinely quite fun.
Similar
to Like a Dragon, a bunch of mini stuff and whatever.
Yes. Yeah, and I guess a little more like focused, maybe you'd say, in that like there were several different kinds of sort of open world checklists to move through, but they were all really fun. All of the like special kind of enemy here, where if you beat this one, what was it? It was like, was it you beat this specific enemy that you would get like progress towards a certain bonus?
I think you like weaken them, and then you to like fight in Chadley's little machine, and then
that's
if you beat them, you get them as a summon.
Yes.
So you can like get them down to like level. You can lower them like 5 levels, where then if you take them on, they're a bit easier.
Yeah, that's right.
The like shrines or whatever, and like the amount of music and just the level of quality of the as well as the huge volume of stuff there was crazy. Dragon's Dogma 2. Not the opposite, that's not fair, but like was massive, and the fact that it kind of made you travel the world in such a weird, unique way, like not having fast travel in a traditional way. Was cool to a point. It was very creative. And then you got sick of it, but it was creative, and I think it was such a cool idea that just towards the sort of back end of that game, some of it fell apart a little bit.
Right.
But it it certainly gave the feeling of being this like daunting, enormous world in a very cool way.
Yes, I don't feel like I'd experienced that since maybe like some earlier Elder Scrolls games where it's just like, and they did have fast travel, but initially it was like, well, mate, if you want to go to that town, you're going to have to walk to that town and you're going to have to dodge some fucking crabs and mosquitoes, and that's the only way to get there.
That's the way the real world is. It's got that fuck you scale. It doesn't care. You can't
I'm
fast travel through
crabs
the jungle,
and mosquitoes on the way to Woolworths fucking every day.
Metaphor was pretty expected, but like those Atlas games are so massive that, it's cool. And then, Shadow of the Erd Tree, it was so fucking awesome. Like, figuring out how big that game was.
Yeah.
And the fact that they'd just gone for it as hard as they did for a second time with that game was very, very cool to me.
Would you like to know something else that's very, very cool?
$1 billion.
Yes. I didn't include Shadow of the Erd Tree on my top 10 because I categorized it as DLC.
Now, that's that type of cool bookkeeping that I love to spend time thinking about, which I also do, but who knows if I have the same category. Maybe I think it's a bit special.
Yeah.
You don't see this on at the Academy. Like, I mean, I don't know, boys. I don't think this is technically a movie, so I will not be reading out what's in this envelope.
I mean, they kind of do that, like straight to DVD movies and stuff like that were never really in serious consideration.
Netflix have to sneak something out into cinema for like one session on one day.
And I
they had to buy their own cinema to do it. Yeah.
TV is like the DLC of movies or something. The Oscars don't, and then when it got weird where it's like, fuck, well, this is basically an 8-hour movie. What do we do about Mayor of Easttown?
Or like, dropping a behind-the-scenes documentary that's like an hour and a half long on a DVD, and it's like, well, this is a documentary, but it doesn't, no one's viewing it that way. That's what Shadow of the Erd Tree is to me.
DVD extra.
Yeah.
It's the director's commentary of Elden Ring.
But it's my favorite DVD extra of the year. I'll say that.
I don't think anyone's going to question whether our number 8 games of the year are games.
Yep. Well, my number 8, not a big game, quite a small game. It's also one of my unique games of the year, and it's also, if you remember, a game that I loved in spite of the fact that I played it while I had the worst flu of my life.
Oh, yes.
Thank goodness you're here.
That was one of my didn't get time to play it things as well. I didn't read it before, but
This was the perfect thing to play while sick. Fairly short experience, not a ton of like gameplay in it. More about like it felt like you were playing through a living comic book.
Right.
An art style that I really enjoyed. Genuinely very funny. A weird tone to it. Just a fun. Yeah, not a walking simulator, but just like no bits that you can kind of fail at. You just need to sort of go around and kind of poke at everything and get this almost like Rube Goldberg machine sort of chain of events going. And just really charming, really well made. Yeah, like just going for something quite unique and honed in and totally nailing it. Not trying to be anything bigger than that. Just trying to make a fun, silly little experience that I think all ages would enjoy. And yeah, I just thought they nailed it. It was so cool. Real like Goose Game kind of feel to it. I think if you like that game, definitely check out Thank Goodness You're Here.
Those types of games, I was going to say, like Goose Game, when it just walk around and prod stuff and see if it does something fun. When it's done right, it's so fun. Like it, just the sort of PS5 area of Astrobot. Where all the things are like running around punching all of those guys. It's nothing. You don't get anything, but it's fun. And you're looking at all these creative things
this reminder that that's what a video game is. It's like interactive entertainment. So just having this like sandbox where you can just walk around and prod everything and it's going to have some kind of reaction. I think like you forget like when you're playing a game and you're like running forward and jumping, like you are interacting, but you're kind of more focused on this task rather than just like, here's this world that I'm just like, I can just kind of do anything in here and see what happens. That's my number 8 game. Thank goodness you're here.
Sounds more like a DVD extra to me. What about yours, Ben?
A game where I really enjoyed running forwards and jumping, And I know that's a little bit, gauche. It's a little bit simple for
Very
some
80s.
people.
Yeah. The common man's entertainment.
Yeah.
All right, Croc, is it?
Well, I wouldn't get too cocky, Knox, because it was your previous game on the list, Stellar Blade. I've really tossed and turned while playing this game. No, I tossed and turned on like where to put this in my list because
Same.
it's really, really fun. It is a really, really well-honed, perfectly like tightly controlled third-person action game. The combat is so good. It reminded me of like Lies of P or something like that. That sort of bordering on Souls-like, bordering on Bayonetta, like somewhere in between, but like fast-paced. Really like, I guess Black Myth Wukong was probably quite comparable, like that sort of approach to combat. And I love the visual design. I love it's similar to sort of Death Stranding and stuff, the like user interface stuff, that sort of like design in that sense. It really just appeals to me and my like sensibilities. And that is like, on top of this fun game with an interesting, like weird post-apocalyptic, like I said, sort of like science fiction anime story, world building sort of shit. It was just really, really fun to play. And like, I don't think I really had criticisms that should have bumped it down the list. Like, no, it's not incredibly intelligent or like thematically rich story, but I don't really mind when I'm watching, like Bubblegum Crisis or something like that.
No, it's still fun.
Yeah.
I think if this was like around the launch of the PS3, this game would have been probably like both of our number 3 or something. There's something about it, and I don't know what it is because I had the same thing where I was like, but it's not like top of the top. I don't know what it is because it's not like it's broken. It's not like it feels bad. It's just that it's, I guess, just doing its thing in a cheeseburger sort of way in some ways. And I don't mean that to be an insult because cheeseburger, but like it just makes it very like, oh, cool, but like a little unsurprising or something. That I don't know.
I think that's fair to say. It's not. Yeah, like it's a challenging game only in the sense that the combat is hard. Like when you've played and enjoyed like a Nier Automata or a game like a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth where there is the combat and all of this other stuff and this grand story and characters that are, I guess that's the other thing, the characters are quite thin, that's not but yes, when you have enjoyed games that achieve a bit more than this, then it I guess, your rating scale means like, well, it's not as good as those.
There's some X factor that's not there, but it's great still. And it's very fun.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
a fun game.
Hell, it's the 8th or 9th best game of the year.
I couldn't agree more.
I would say a similar thing, specifically about the 8th best game of the year for me we've talked about it a couple times, UFO 50 or UAP 50 as they bloody call it these days. I just thought this thing was fucking awesome. It's like... If this isn't a category, but like concept of the year, sure, I love it, and the way they pulled off it's in a nostalgia spot for me or whatever, an appreciation spot for me that I guess didn't register that I had of those like bootleg compilations of these old PC games where there's so much mystery and weirdness and you don't know quite what you're doing with all of those things, and just the dedication, like you were saying before, Tommy, with which they pulled off that concept is brave because it's off-putting. Like,
this game has come up so many times already in every other category as well. It's almost a case to be made that it's our overall number one game of the year.
Totally.
Just because of how much we've talked about it, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it in other categories.
And I don't think any of the individual games are like better than the ones further up or anything, but the fact that they made fucking 50 is crazy, and that some of them are legitimately great. And just the cool weird little story as you figure out the timeline of this company and seeing those like through lines between different designers and series that they've made up and so on. It's just like, it's such a well executed idea that I also just enjoy kind of going back to and having something new to find so many times. Like, how many games do you even turn on 50 times, let alone have something new to do every time, hypothetically?
Yeah. It is such a cool
bizarre.
kind of almost interesting, not love letter, but like tribute to or kind of showcasing of like how indie development works and how much game development has changed over the last like whatever 10, 15 years, because so many of these started as little game jam projects, like these small teams just kind of all fucking around making these like interesting little things that they wanted to see in the world that then they end up putting into this bigger scope. Like, it is this really cool representation of the kinds of things that it's possible to make now with just a small team with just a bunch of cool ideas. Like, it's kind of neat in that sense of like how it kind of organically grew into this like bigger project than what they were imagining.
Totally. I don't think I had the most fun with it or whatever out of any game of the year, but I think it might be my most appreciated game of the year. It's the one that I look at and I'm like, damn, that's cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Even if I don't think all of it is like the most the best time. I'd rather play some of these other ones and did. But anyway, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I reckon. You know what else is cool? Good looking games. Which would bring us to the Awooga Award for Best Looking Game, presented by one of those old-fashioned cartoon wolves with his tongue out. Old-fashioned cartoon wolves, humana humana. This is a stupid bit doing these things, but you know what? Who cares, brother? It's the middle of the end bit of the year. Everyone's on their ass drunk anyway. As you would feel with some of these good-looking games. How about a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth out of the gate?
That is a real good-ass looking game.
You're right.
Like
talking about the scale of it before, the fucking level of detail of all of that shit. And again, not just like the graphical fidelity, like the designs, the fucking Chocobo rest stops, you know, like the logos, the symbols, the clothing. It's all just so fucking cool.
And rarely a moment with it where you're like, oh, well, I guess they've had to make a lot for this game, so that looks a bit weird. Like you said, the detail is insane. Like, it might have the most graphics of any game this year. You know, it's awesome looking. Similar
to the first one, where like hugely detailed areas that you are in for like maybe 4 minutes.
Right.
Like that hotel that you check into in the Golden Saucer. It's like incredibly detailed, like kind of weird haunted house thing. Yep. And you spend... Yeah, there's like 2 things that happen there, and then it's gone. It's not reused at any point.
It's nuts. Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga, sort of a different thing where they wring everything out of that, but boy, does it all look top of the line. Yeah. A very different one, but I think very good looking in its own way, is Animal Well.
Yep.
Like, it's an art style that's been done before, and I think that the fact that it stands out in that crowd to me, in terms of just the quality of its animations and the detail of all that stuff, and the way the lighting interacted with the pixel art, I think it was so cool.
Yeah, that was really well done.
Really did a lot of atmosphere building with the limited palette.
Yeah, and if you wanted to talk atmosphere, brother, you got to talk the Plucky Squire. What a cool art style, and pulled off really well with a unique idea. Could have been unique, but didn't. Maybe not in terms of playing. But yeah, looks great.
Best thing about the game, I think,
and it's great.
Yeah. My pick for this, and it is not so much your graphical detail. Children of the Sun, fucking loved how it looked. It was such a strong element of the appeal of the game and the feeling, and everything about that game was enhanced because of how it looked. I thought it was so cool and so fucking creepy and weird and off-putting. I loved it.
And like the it's so important to like the readability of the environment and being able to like track these people down. It almost looks like, there's a lot of games now where they've got the accessibility stuff, so you can kind of change
like
how
the high
it looks if you're
mode
like
and whatever.
or for colorblind people, like certain things will stick out. It's kind of almost looks like, so you kind of need to do something like that with this game, because you need to be able to locate the people but not make it look too deliberately like you're holding the player's hand, and the fact that it's just an art style that looks cool in its own right, but is also incredibly functional. Kind of similar to Animal Well, like a lot of the stuff is hidden in the environment and like.
I think Children of the Sun as well, pulling off that kind of dirty look without like. Remember Cruelty Squad? I thought like conceptually the way that looked was so cool, but I hated it in motion and to look at it, which was kind of the point. But it just became difficult to function within that for me. Unlike exactly what you're saying with Children of the Sun. Couple of quick others. I thought Astro Book looked fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's obviously very different to what something like Final Fantasy is pulling off, because it is very like stylized and cartoony, but it just does that so well. Like just seeing something with that like cartoony look that I love, but like with like really trying to use as much of the PlayStation 5 hardware to like really push it and really get things looking like shiny and big, and just the animations of just like everything's so fluid and quick and snappy, and just like another one where just walking around and just hitting boxes and smashing trees and just running around like interacting with the environment like feels so good and looks so good that I loved how it looked.
The amount of like fun animations that made me smile in that game. Might be the highest amount of any game this year, at least. Like, it's packed full of so much stuff like that, which is very cool.
I know it doesn't count because it's DLC, but I also thought Shadow of the Erd Tree looked fucking amazing.
Especially for being a follow-up to a 2-year-old game now that also didn't look the most cutting edge when it came out.
Yeah.
They really, art-wise especially, pulled off some cool shit with that.
Yeah.
Just quickly as well, I mentioned Tekken 8. Those hunky guys, they got big biceps and they look, just visually that thing looks awesome. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, like some of that campaign stuff, again, looks cool, but they've got the most money out of any video game developer, probably.
I was going to mention that too, just because like it had been a few years since I played one, and like, just the facial animations, the character animation, it's all just so incredible these days. It's
Other than like the launch bugs that always happen because of their development cycle, the Call of Duty games, more than almost any of the others, when they're going, they look like the most expensive games in the world.
Yeah.
And Black Myth Wukong looked really cool from what I played. That intro is crazy and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
You know what else looks awesome to me? By the way, speaking of visuals, if you're watching the video version of this, I hate how my jumper keeps disappearing and I'm pissed off about it. And I've wanted to take it off this whole time, but then it would mean my headphones had to come off, and I'm not getting rid of this background with the trophies on it. So you're just going to have to watch me warp in and out of existence.
We're taking a real world break at some point, just quickly. So maybe there'll just be a cut where we come back and you're just
100%
like magically not wearing a jumper.
This is like one of those jumpers that, on TV sets, they always go to people like, you have to take off that fucking jumper. It's making our cameras flip out. I'm furious about it. The opposite feeling to what I have about our number 7 games of the year, which is a feeling of joy.
Yeah, number 7 for me. Maybe we'll probably talk about it later. Metaphor Refantasio.
Yeah, brother, we're going to chat about that down the line, I reckon.
Okay.
All right.
Good game, though.
Should we hold off?
Let's hold off.
Yeah, let's have a chat. Yeah.
Well, here's a game that I don't think either of you played, so it will definitely not appear later on in this list. The walking simulator / horror game Still Wakes the Deep.
Feel free, have at it. I don't even quite remember what this one is.
It's fucking awesome. It was the one where it's a guy. It's a Scottish game, I think, made by a Scottish team.
Cool.
But the protagonist certainly is like a Scottish. He's like a Glaswegian. It's like starts off with this sort of like council flat kitchen sink drama. The husband and the protagonist, he's pissed his money up against the wall again. He's got like a wife and maybe a kid on the way, and he's like the wife doesn't want him to leave, but he goes and he works on this oil rig for one last job to get some money for the family.
No. Always say I'll happily do one more job after this. But in the back of your head, no.
I'll never stop working.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. This is just another day at the office for me.
I love what you do, and you never work a day in your life.
Nowhere near retirement.
No one can know what the future holds, but as far as I'm concerned, this will not be my last job.
Now you're tempting fate too much in the other direction.
Yeah. Now I got a lot of hubris about how easy this job's going to be. I'm going to fly pretty damn close to the sun if I have a say in the matter.
Just another normal day at work with no weird... So yes, he goes off to the oil rig with a couple of his mates. He's like getting in trouble, like he's kind of a shitty worker. And before he can get shipped back home, something weird happens. And they drill a little too deep. And something gets woken up from the deep. Still. But yeah, it's like sort of all of those parts of kind of The Last of Us where you're like exploring the sort of verticality of ruined buildings and all of that sort of stuff. It's turned into a first-person, horror exploration game.
Nice.
But some puzzles, but most of them are pretty straightforward. It's like, oh, you're at a locked door, you're at an impasse. Now you need to go back through the room that has the monsters in it and find the thing. But it's all done really well. The performances, and that's something I'll call out in a bit as well, are fantastic. Voice acting is incredible. And yeah, this team just does a hell of a lot with, I think, limited resources. I feel like it maybe is like an Unreal game because, yeah, like all of the characters, look fantastic and the lighting and the fucking textures are great. But yeah, it's just a really well put together, well structured game that I honestly got emotional at times. Like the story, because it's so generally relatable. It's people just trying to work to support their families, and then shit starts going wrong. And the
like
characters,
Firewatch, in a different, the rest of it way, but just the setup was a cool thing for Firewatch, where I think a very real world version of a creepy thing going on.
Yeah, exactly. You come to care about these characters, and like obviously shit's happening to them that's not good, and it's all well performed, and they're all very believable. It's the complete opposite to Stellar Blade. There's no combat, but all the characters feel like actually real people. So I still recommend it. It's not a long game, so it's something that if you want to like knock something off over your holidays, listeners, still wakes the deep.
If that one was on Game Pass, it sounds... I mean, this is the classic question about any game.
That is a good question. I definitely played it on Steam. It's available on all platforms. I don't know if it's on Game Pass or not.
Sure. Hey, that information will change over time anyway.
Yeah, we want this episode to be evergreen.
Well, what won't change over time is the fact that for 2024, the game I chose to be the 7th best game of the year for me was Dragon's Dogma 2. We mentioned it a little bit before.
Nice.
Look, I'll say right now, I don't think it's the perfect game, but...
That's why it's only 7.
Yeah. I had a hell of a good time playing it, and I played it for long enough and enjoyed myself during it. I think this is one of my... And unless this is coming later in the list, I just assumed that it wasn't for anyone else.
No, it's one of my honorable mentions for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like I didn't get to play quite as much of it as you did, but I had the same experience. Like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the quirks with it.
Yeah.
And the... What was it called? The fucking... The system of little helpers?
Oh, yeah, your pawns.
Pawns, that's right. I thought that was a really good system and a fun way to approach the party sort of dynamic. And then, like bugs and shit aside, I think, the detail and the sort of the thoughtfulness with which like the environment was laid out was really, really cool. And you had like a genuine sense of danger in it, which is not... so much present in similar games these days.
The way the combat feels is so unique as well, and like weighty, kind of the opposite of Stellar Blade. Like it's not like a Souls thing because it's still like action combat, but it's so heavy feeling in a fun way, and it gets pretty easy towards the end again. Like I think the game is better during its first sort of half or 2/3 or something, but it feels so unique to this game, like climbing all over the monsters and really feeling like you're swinging your fucking sword at people. Kind
of like a Monster Hunter light.
In a way, it's of that like type of thing. And I think this is the one I was thinking of earlier, saying like a 7 out of 10 that you love.
Yeah.
Something around there. This is just a really... There's something about this game where it's got a lot of that X factor we kind of mentioned with Stellar Blade. It has a lot of that for me, with some stuff that I know is objectively could be better.
Right.
But I had a whale of a time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, mentioned when it came out as well that it really was just the first game up-resed, upscaled, and almost ported. Yeah. And that first one was so weird and idiosyncratic and different to, your Skyrims and your Dragon Ages and stuff like that. It really is its own weird kind of game. And, you got to... I get the same level of appeal from that, like, weirdness, and respect it for being like, no, this is how I want to make this game. Totally. It might not always work, but this is how I want to do it.
And it's that type of weirdness that works within itself. And so, like, it's weird compared to other games, but it's not like it feels weird in its own thing. Does that make sense?
In its own ecosystem, yeah.
So, whale of a time. And speaking of bloody whales, just because I thought of this segue when I said whale the first time, I wanted to wrap back around to it.
Yes.
Whales sing songs, don't they? And our next category is Best Music of the Year, sponsored this year by D Flat. D Flat, the note you don't hear about very often.
Yeah, that is true.
It's because it's C sharp, and people say C sharp and saying D flat. It's not in that many keys or whatever, or like scales. You wouldn't refer to it as D flat. But we're not going to tell the sponsor that. I only had 3 games that I could recall really loving the music for this year. What about you guys?
Oh, interesting.
Would you like to be jogged of what my ones were?
Yeah, I'm sure one of them's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
It absolutely is, and I think if we were bothering to do winners,
yeah,
rather than just having a feel-good award ceremony where everyone gets these bloody millennial award ceremonies with their participation trophies, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth had so much music,
yes,
and it was of such high quality, and like with Remake, the fact that they were able to take those very classic themes now, very well-known things, and put spins on them and use them to create new things that would elevate that already great music often is fucking impressive.
And then filling in the gaps with brand new stuff that is of such a high level of quality as well.
That fits, yeah. Like, speaking of Star Wars earlier, the number of Star Wars things they've made where the composers, and not to discredit them because it's a hard watermark to reach, but the music that they've had to try and put in alongside John Williams. Even John Williams' new themes, he's struggled to recreate that 70s, 80s stuff. The effect of it. So the fact that, composers on this game have been able to, and I don't know any names off the top of my head, I'm sorry, have been able to match and, play with that in this way that isn't so reverent of it that it's afraid to fuck around. It's just great.
Mitsuo Suzuki and Masashi Hamazu, the 2 composers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Great fucking work.
I'll take both of my hats that I probably shouldn't have been wearing at the same time off to them.
Well, you've ruined the joke with those 2 hats.
I think if I put a 3rd hat on, though, again, even less funny. A guy wearing 70 hats, not funny at all.
Can I predict the 2 other clear standouts for the music that
Absolutely.
I think you
I've got them
guys
written down here.
Definitely would have liked? And I think I agree on at least one of them. Astrobot.
Bang on. It's on this page.
And the other one, Metaphor ReFantasio.
Those are the 3 I had written down. They're the standouts from the year for sure.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I think Metaphor does an interesting thing with it, for sure. My other one would be Thank Goodness You're Here, because it actually ends with a musical number, an actual little song with lyrics and everything, which is cool.
Do you know what? I would maybe chuck an Indiana Jones and the Great Circle in there from recently too, because similar to what we were saying about Final Fantasy, it takes those themes, and it's so lucky to have these really recognizable literal themes as well, and motifs that it does a great job with. But Astrobot has such fun, catchy, perfect tone, platformer, fun vibe music. It's really cool. And then when you get into those PlayStation levels. The stuff it does with like that stupid remix with like Kratos being like boy in the middle of the song is so stupid but fun.
The like little Western theme when you're in your little base area is awesome.
Like just the stupid little bleeps are perfect. They're spot on for that game. You know, what more do you want from a soundtrack than to be suitable for the thing it's soundtracking? And yeah, Metaphor is like so weird in a way, but really works. That voice of the fact that I didn't get sick of that is a
for
testament.
Something that's like pretty obviously with Persona they can kind of do what they want, even though they do pick a style, but it being modern day, you're way more open. And for something like Metaphor, where you would feel like they would probably be pretty hemmed in, to still find ways to make it very interesting and weird and unique, and kind of have these weird modern flourishes without feeling like it's doing that like incongruous, like, you know, oh, it's a movie set in the 1800s, but we're going to have like 50 Cent in the soundtrack.
It's
like,
not A Knight's Tale
still,
or whatever.
Yeah. It's really impressive.
Totally. And yeah, exactly that it avoids the trap of just like, well, I guess it's a bunch of horns and stuff because it's fantasy. Like it's cool. And those were the only three that I could. And yeah, thank goodness you here just didn't play that, but that's good to hear that that's good too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, there are a bunch of games where I'm sure the soundtracks were good, but were not obvious and overt. Like, I played a shit ton of Black Myth Wukong, and I really liked the style. Like, it's very traditional Chinese music, and it's all very well implemented. There's no, and I guess, we've been talking about, like, themes and sort of, like, recognizable hooks. It doesn't really have that, but it's, like, perfectly suited to the game.
Shadow of the Erd Tree is kind of similar, where like I don't think anything stood out for me in the way that it has done with some of the other FromSoft games.
Sure,
but it's doing a great job still.
Yeah,
and I think you take for granted, like, well, of course, Elden Ring has great boss music. Like the Dancing Lion or whatever it was has a particularly great theme, but so it's good, but it's just not up there with those. Especially Rebirth was just like fucking great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Had great music. The little overworld theme was really nice and charming, and I mean, any game where you're going into like a dark, fractured dimension, if you're a composer, that's a fucking gift from above. Because as we're talking about with like bringing in more modern stuff, that's where you get to start doing a bit of techno and a bit of, like a weird electronic stuff, and it
I'm going to play this symbol in reverse.
Yeah.
You're getting Skrillex involved.
But yeah, the like I forget what they call it in the game, but the bits of music where you go into the like dark dimension or whatever are really cool.
Nice.
You know what else is cool?
What?
If I've learned anything from Sesame Street, it's the number 6. One of the top 10 numbers. And the location of some of our top 10 games, specifically the 6th ones, which are these.
Yep.
My number 6 game of the year, Animal Well. It is
time
to talk about Animal Well. Great fun at a point where I felt pretty uninterested in Metroidvanias. Just there'd been a lot of them, a lot of really good ones, but you really know what you're in for. Sometimes that's enjoyable. Just kind of switch off and be like, I know how this is all going to go. But to take a genre that's been pretty heavily hammered in the last few years and find ways to make it a bit feel fresh. And I mean, I finished it, but I didn't even get into the level of like all the other like insane shit that was in there. And like similar to UFO 50, like I just feel like it, even though I didn't engage with that side of it, it just deserves to be on there because like this one guy just going for it and pulling it off and doing all this stuff where people had to have their printers turned on to experience stuff that the game was making you do. And
in like a relatively new and fresh way too, that like that idea of like, but the game has hidden meta secrets in it has been done a million times, and like those, not a million, probably way fewer, but like those ARGs and stuff became really popular in the last sort of
I was
10,
gonna say
years.
It reminded me of like the Cloverfield ARG when that movie came out. It was
So it's like ground that has been trodden before, and they made it feel fresh, like with the pixel graphics, like with so much stuff about the game. Where technically, it's something that should seem like uninspired or whatever, but it feels exciting in this.
Yeah, and especially like playing it right as it came out, and then there was so much discussion about it at the time of like, oh right, this little bit does this, and oh, have you tried using the yo-yo to actually, you can actually like cheat it and sort of do this and like being able to be like part of that conversation as people were like figuring it out in real time was it was really fun. Those games where like a big part of it becomes the social aspect of it, of like how you're engaging with it, which there are bits of this game that it forces you to do. It forces you to get out of the game and be talking to people about like the other things that they've found in there in order to put all these puzzles together. Like, I just thought that was so cool.
And even just its first layer sort of platformer Metroidvania type of thing, like saying the yo-yo, those items and stuff were really creative and new for that type of game. And that type of game, again, has been so explored, especially in like indie games in the last 10 years. And they came up with it. There were brand new things in that game that, you know, functioned in ways that I had to it wasn't like, oh, I've got the equivalent of the whatever beam or something.
Cool. And you get the like the double jump, you get the like the hook shot, but then in this you've got like your little bubble gun, which essentially means that you now can jump further, but it's done in a way that's more interesting than just like, oh, now you've just learnt this. You can dodge now. You've just learnt this ability.
Frisbee,
it is like
same with the yo-yo, and they've all got kind of two uses that you discover in a really like well done, like organic feeling way. But it's because the game is really well designed to teach you its stuff.
Yeah, and trying to fill out that map and just like. Yeah, that thing that I've always loved about this genre of game where you just are wandering around in circles, you're beating your head against the wall, you feel like you're tapped out, and then you find one little gap in a wall and you go into this bigger room, and then there's a switch, and then this thing's open, and then all of a sudden you feel like you've just like doubled the amount of area that you can explore with just like one pulling of like a tiny little thread. I love that feeling of being like, oh, holy shit, there's like, I thought I'd hit the edge of this game and now there's like this whole other fucking bit under here. Is just
when you
like
pull that thread
so satisfying.
And like remember how, oh, I saw that thread 20 times earlier.
Right.
I didn't know to pull it. Now I can go back to all those. It's cool. And Animal World does a great job of it.
Especially knowing that it's just made by one guy and you're sitting there being like,
crazy,
you son of a bitch. when you're like, when you find the like little hidden thing and you're like, I outsmarted you, prick.
I don't know anything about him. Do you also picture like 16 monitors attached to like a big setup for making, you know what I mean? Like a real
I picture like an old 386 and like a bunch of fucking graph paper on the wall.
Sure.
Like I'm imagining like 90s PC developer guy.
Yeah, using a compass for some reason.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm picturing like brain in a jar, body like suspended from the ceiling with wires, like eyes glazed back, tubes going into the mouth.
I'm picturing like 90s Pamela Anderson right now.
I like brain stuff. In a jar. Mother Brain making a Metroidvania. Being like, hey, going back to my roots.
Even Mother Brain is like, why is the veiny a bit in here? That doesn't...
Giving Mother Brain.
Well, my sixth game of the year is, unlike Animal Well, something that no one is talking about, no one has talked about. It might just be me playing this game, and it's not going to be on anyone else's list. Citadellum. This is sort of my, like, it's the opposite of Animal Well. Everything in it is familiar to me. Everything in it I knew instinctively how to do, but fuck, it's just a good version of that kind of game. It really is like an Epic Mickey's rebrushed, like, it's my remake of the year, but it is legally distinct.
I'm with you, Tommy, where I was sure he was going to say Call of Duty or something.
No, I just the like the setup to that really sounded like Trump delivering his game of the year. Like, I'm the only one who's playing it, folks.
No one's talking about it. They're not talking about it.
I'm the smartest gamer out there. No one else has realized it.
Citadellum.
But no, it's the opposite. It's like such a specific niche kind of game, and
this was the one that was like I don't know why Pharaoh is the one I'm thinking of, but like those old like Caesar and those sorts of things. Yeah.
Exactly. It is that kind of game, but it is done with a nice HD level of polish, quite a few quality of life tweaks. Mm-hmm. The AI is so much better. The interface is great. It's endlessly playable. There's sandbox modes. There's fun campaigns. And it is just that exact game. It is Caesar, it is Pharaoh, it's Zeus, but it's done in a fun, fresh way, and it's easy to fucking get on Steam and run on my computer. But it's genuinely like, it is a modern version of those games which used to be really popular, and I feel like maybe we've progressed to like more accessible, like City Skylines, the sort of SimCity evolution.
The like 4X games, those type of things.
Yeah. But hey, I'm old-fashioned, and I liked Citadelum because it was set during the Roman Empire.
You're saying the Roman Empire is your... Anyway, if they don't make them like that anymore, then go make one, and you'll get number 6.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Citadelum. All right.
Citadelum.
Hell
I barely knew him.
What does that mean? My number 6 would be, and I don't know if we'll talk about this later or not. You tell me. The Rise of the Golden Idol.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Nice.
What about you, Tommy?
I got nothing to say about it. No, I just didn't play enough of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, we'll talk about it a bit later, but as you can tell by being in number 6 spot and probably further for Ben, it would be funny if it wasn't later in yours. You were just like, we'll talk about it after.
Yeah.
It's good, though.
It's a damn good game.
That's all I'll say for now. Well, I think IRL, we're going to take a brief little break. Mm-hmm. In terms of listening experience, maybe you'll hear a touch of music. Sure. I don't know what you'll hear. Probably that. But we'll be back in a second. And guess what? If you're watching, I bet I'm going to be wearing something different.
We should all change outfits. Yeah. We are so back.
We are back. That was a cool turn of phrase. I reckon that could catch on.
Well, the year is so over.
I am so. It's still Game of the Year time, baby. I've changed my jumper if you're watching the video.
Yep.
And the problems are solved. I exist. I'm fully touchable, corporeal.
We've got an iced latte here. Ooh. We are ready to get into hour 2.
That's
you
right.
Sipped through that thing quick as a fish.
Yeah. You honking that down on the walk back too?
What are you, some kind of drinker of iced coffee?
I've had it. It's been in my possession for like half an hour now.
All right, thirsty.
That's all right. That's all right.
God, it's funny.
Guy over here likes to fucking drink liquids, eh?
Someone doing something normal and being like, get a load of old sandwich eater over here.
And it works. It works. I am getting genuinely annoyed. It always works. It doesn't matter what it is and who it's on. It always works.
I bet you are, old couch against the wall.
Fuck.
Yeah, needed a lot of room in there, did you?
Yeah. Sitting on a chair, are you? Mr. Microphone? Okay.
Oh, at work, are we? Doing our job. La-di-da.
Nice. Get some pictures on that wall. Yeah, so you can see them, I bet.
Yeah, you love looking at pictures, you little looker.
Oh,
all right, cunt. Read out your fucking little category. Let's get this show on the road.
Well, speaking of the worst feelings you can make someone have, the next category deals with, and I will say, for the ones I wrote down for this too, this category being, I should probably say it first. This is worst games of the year, brought to you. In previous years, it's been brought to you, like around 2012, it's brought to you by the word moist, which everyone pretended to hate around then. It was brought to you by pineapple on pizza. So in a similar vein to those silly words, it's this year, it's been brought to you by famine.
Funny joke
one
answer.
Of the worst things. Yeah. But as opposed to famine, I kind of had to dig to find reasons to include most of these games because I tend to know what my tastes are and avoid things that I'm going to hate often, not always, but there are some reasons for some of these ones I've got here. What about you, Ben? You were the leading the charge for worst games of the year.
Well, there is a game that came out this year that was just fucking... everyone hated it, or everyone disliked it. Everyone thought it was a stupid idea to go in the direction it went in the first place. It tainted a developer's like legacy. It tainted between the balls and the asshole. It just was like... We all saw it coming a mile out as well. And obviously that game was...
Or real? What do you reckon? Place your bets.
Nah, it was Suicide Squad.
Yep. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is also the only like straight up and down bad game I've got written down here.
Yeah, and like I also had a look through sort of bad reviewed games. There's a game on this like 10 worst reviewed Metacritic score games of the year list. Silent Hill: The Short Message, which was like a free-to-play game that came out a few months before Silent Hill 2, and I was like
that and said it was like kind of yucky or something. Like
it was fine. It dealt with like some really heavy themes, and it was like, I don't know if you should deal with like suicide, like teen suicide specifically, in such a like strangely flippant way, but like it was a pretty competently made game. It got 53 on Metacritic, which is like...
Dealing with teen suicide in a flippant way would be my 13th reason.
Now, was that dealt with flippantly? I never watched that.
I have no idea what it is. It's more about the turn of phrase that people use like it's the moist of...
Yeah.
You know, people having pineapple on pizza is my 13th reason. Famine is my first.
But I think
calling it a scallop is mine.
God, this clip is going to go viral, you guys. I think of the games that I played, Suicide Squad was far and away the worst game I actually played.
It was certainly the thing where I was surprised when playing it by the fact that it was so bad because it was boring. It wasn't like it was broken. It was just flat.
Yes.
It was just a dull thing. And
maybe most disappointing even is the fairest way to categorize it.
If you were going to if it had suddenly appeared and we didn't know anything and just knew it was the new Batman-ish game from Rocksteady, for sure. But like you say, I think the writing was on the wall for a while about this one for some reason.
Yeah. I think maybe disappointing, like, yes, including the build-up. Because it's like, well, this company has made fantastic games before. Why are they pivoting to a live service game? That screenshot that was leaked with like the battle pass shit was like, oh, okay, this is heading down a shitty path, and it did continue down that path to mediocrity.
There's that bit early on in that game, early-ish on, where you're kind of walking through the Batman museum.
Yes.
And it's got all like the sort of pop-out cardboard things retelling the story of the Arkham games, basically.
Yep.
And I actually kind of liked that section, but because it was like, yeah, those Arkham games were good. And then almost having that stuff be so directly, there was like, yeah, fuck, man, that's what they haven't been doing.
Yeah.
And weirdly, there was another Arkham game made by other people for the Meta Quest that came out this year. I think barely anyone has touched. Myself included.
It's meant to be good though, like
That's
Arkham
what I've heard.
Shadow something.
Yeah, Arkham Shadow.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Suicide Squad was just an expensive failure. Speaking of which, I also wrote down Concord here.
Yeah.
Just
Did you play Concord? Did anyone play it? I guess it was less than 1,000 people played Concord.
Very few people played it, and you know, I have no idea about the quality of it. I remember people saying that it was actually pretty competent.
Yeah.
It was just super uninteresting to me, and now you can't play it anymore. And just in terms of flops, it's got to be on paper the worst game if you are trying to make money off of games.
Yeah.
It's like this is an all-time bomb.
Yeah. It's
deleted from history.
I thought better of it, but I nearly started listing famous bombs in history, but like real bombs.
Oh,
and
sure.
Thankfully, I stopped myself. I bit my tongue.
Yeah.
And didn't have blood on my tongue, like the blood on the hands of... Anyway.
Big Boy?
I'm
just referring to
There's a couple others
Tommy.
I've got.
I'm not naming a bomb.
It's not a bomb. It's a bomb-ass bitch. In a similar vein, remember Skull and Bones came out this year?
Yes, that was going to be the other one that I was going to bring up. That I also didn't play because like
very rich of us to put them on a worst games list when we haven't played them. I know Concord and this. I'm in the same boat, but no one wanted to get in those boats that were in Skull and Bones. Yep,
just a big, I think a misguided direction in the first place. Like same with Suicide Squad. Why take what was like a great single player game that people loved back in the day, which has inspired, we hoped would inspire like another great sequel, and they just turned it into this fucking bad version of Sea of Thieves.
That was in production, I think I'm right in saying, for longer than Duke Nukem Forever was at the time. Maybe I'm wrong about that, actually. But anyway, like it's fully a big old misstep that I think my memory might be misleading me here. They were in some way obligated to like the Canadian or Singaporean or some Malaysian government somewhere had like given them money, and so that's part of why they just had to do it.
It was it was officially developed by Ubisoft Singapore.
Right.
So yeah, and yes, it began development in 2013. So do the math with Duke Nukem Forever. It's got to be close
because it was announced so long ago that I remember years after the fact trailers for it with like the whatever song, fast pop song, it was like everybody wants to rule the world, whatever it was. Like, oh man, that was around for ages. I wrote down two others here. That Flight Simulator 2024 was impossible for me to play even though I really wanted to, and has been a fucko of a launch, so that deserves a little shout out, but like screaming type shouting.
Yeah.
And then I reckon you'll agree with me on this one, Tommy. Not to put words in your mouth, but gobble these up.
Yep.
The Pokemon trading card game Pocket thing, specifically in terms of its presentation.
Yeah. Real missed opportunity. Very weirdly, like, clinical and dull, and they've just got so much to draw from. It should be a fun, colourful thing to open up, not look like it looks like a blood pressure monitor.
I've kept interacting. I've kept opening packs, because they pop up, and I'm like, hey, I wonder what Pokemon I'll look at. And it's such a cold, depressing experience to log onto that thing. And then, see, oh, look, it's a Scrubadop. That must be from Black and White. I don't know what the fuck that one is. But,
right.
The art on the cards is nice. It's and varied and fun, and the way that those cards were back in the day. So I've been opening it up and when I remember and having a look at those. And every time it's like, why do I have to look at this, like, bad government app that you have to use for something really important that never works? It's got that type of feeling to it.
Yeah.
My
biggest disappointment would probably be I don't really have like a worst game, because as you're saying, if something seems like it's not gonna appeal to me, there's nothing I've really played that I like actively hated.
Yeah.
But in terms of a disappointment, Mario and Luigi Brothership.
I
played the two Mario RPG remakes that have come out in the last year, and like really enjoyed them, and getting back into those kind of split off franchises of Mario RPG. I thought it was cool that they were able to bring this back, even though the original studio has gone under. I love the art style. I was ready for it to be fun, and maybe a lot of it is just that JRPG fatigue, and it's not bad. Like, I think it's especially good as a like kids maybe first RPG, but it just was really dragging, and I hear the combat gets better as it goes along, but just a bit of a I was really ready to love that game, and put a bit of time into it, and then just went, I think I'm done here. So that was probably my biggest disappointment, from how jazzed I was from the trailer to
fair enough.
Result.
Well, speaking of being done here, we're done with that category. Sorry to those games for getting roasted, but from roasting, I hate this, but from roasting to cooking, the studios that made our fifth favorite games of the year must have cooked.
That is going to be one of the links on the Game Awards.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's your. What was that guy, Bruce Valanche? He used to write for like all of the awards shows and stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You've gotten into his patter. That is exactly the kind of segue.
We will know from today in a few days, but you will all know from a couple of weeks ago. So, enjoy whatever point of time you're in currently. Fifth favorite games, Tommy.
Speaking of links in the Game Awards, my number 5 game of the year, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom.
Nice.
Loved this. Finished it off while I was in Vietnam recently, and Yeah, such a surprise this even existing. I think we all thought, I mean, we did all think at the start of the year that this would be the year that we'd get the Switch 2. Switch very much seemed like it was winding down. Then they had that little direct where all of a sudden there's, a little bit of juice left in the tank, and for having been so focused on the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and all these ideas of really reinventing Zelda, to kind of go back and do this very traditional version of it where they still find a way to make it interesting and different, and to take a lot of these ideas that they've been playing around with in Tears of the Kingdom especially, and bring them into the more constrained design of a traditional 2D top-down Zelda. Yeah, I thought it was great. Had a couple of little technical issues, and it's maybe, I don't think it's quite up there for me in terms of like the all-time 2D Zelda games, but I just really appreciated the fact that they, it's what I love when Nintendo gets into the zone where they really cook and they really try things while kind of leaning into their history. I just had a really good time with it. Went around and did not all the side stuff, but before I finished it off, there's like all the little kind of mini rifts that are in the overworld. So I just kind of made a point of going around and cleaning up and finishing off all the rest of the map. And presentation was great. Loved that they kind of brought back that art style from the Link's Awakening remake and did that again. And great game. Had a really, really fun time with it.
I totally agree with the thing of like folding in the newer stuff into the older stuff was done in a clever way, where there was like this unique mechanic that was very similar to Tears of the Kingdom. That it's very weird to say it's a unique mechanic that's similar to Tears of the Kingdom, but you know what I mean. And then tying that in with what they'd done with that Link's Awakening remake and revisiting that was really cool. It didn't make like the list for me, but I had a good time with it. It just for whatever reason didn't quite click in.
Didn't grab
to
you
my
in the
gears.
same way. Yeah, I mean, there was something about it had been rumored for a while, like, oh, they're doing a new one and you're gonna play as Zelda, and it seemed to me like that would mean that it was more of like a side thing, or a very like
It's
maybe
crazy
simplistic younger audience thing. But it's not a side thing at all. It's like totally is. It is a fully fledged new Legend of Zelda game where who you're playing as is kind of by the by, other than the fact that you don't have a sword and everything, but also like finding ways to bring a bit of that classic stuff in, like give you a sword and bombs and everything, without making it too easy or making it too frustrating that you don't have access to those things. Like, I really thought they did such a good job of, it is kind of like what you were saying earlier, Ben, about that idea of a game that you hear described and it's like, I don't know how that's gonna work. Like, how is that not going to be a complete mess? But I feel like they did a really good job of, getting the balance just right.
Sending your little squad out to fight for you was always pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did the Zelda game thing, which has always been in like the little rectangle in the top left of the magazine in 1999, where they're like the same ones that'd be like, you can play as Luigi maybe in Mario 64. Like, it's just been that thing of like they'll do it next time, other than that CDI one. So it's cool. They did it.
Yeah. Well, similarly, I always was anticipating. I heard rumors and leaks and little fucking hints that they would make a third-person puzzle game featuring a nun as the protagonist, and well, wouldn't you know it, they finally did it.
Wow.
Indica is my number 5 game of the year. It's so creative. It's such an effective and comprehensive and overwhelming atmosphere and world and creepiness and like, thoughtfulness and detail. It's just a real weird, unique, specific experience that I've got from no other game. It has like superficial similarities with some sort of horror puzzle games. It has, I don't know, like we talked about Still Wakes the Deep and sort of walking simulators going really heavy on the story and the character at the expense of some other stuff. But this, I feel like, balanced it all out really well. And I just genuinely have never played anything else like it. It's such an interesting experience. And one I really do recommend everyone, dip in on. I'm sure, like, it was never a particularly expensive game. I'm sure there'll be sales and stuff where you can pick it up. It's it's great. It's great fun. It's hard to sell the sort of specific, feel that it gives because it is quite unique. But it's really creative and I hope these people make some more games and get a bit more eyes on them in future.
I've seen it chatted about a little bit, and it's been on my list of stuff I've meant to get around to for a while. So I hope it's done well because it does sound cool, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go one day.
It has such a strong sort of visual style. A lot of the sort of cutscenes and like in engine scripted moments have such interesting camera angles. Like it really leans into that thing which I always feel like is underutilized in games is like you can put the fucking camera literally anywhere.
Yeah, put it in the other room.
Why? Yeah.
Put it in the cupboard.
Why always in cutscenes do just like over the shoulder to one character, reverse to the other character, and then a wide... like it's always such basic filmmaking techniques when you literally can do anything. Put the camera on the floor.
Put it in my ass.
And but they really do like... And because it has such a creepy feel to it in general... like they just use that stuff to really good effect in ways that I've really not seen done before. So that as well is something that sets it apart and makes it worth playing, but also worth being my 5th favorite game of my year.
Dope. Well, speaking of puzzle games with interesting camera angles, my 5th favorite game of this year was Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Oh!
I had a good ass time with this game. And a lot of similar sort of stuff where like the vibe, the tone, the way it tells like this story that is like more about mood than about plot kind of. And there's sort of a plot to it that unravels in this really cool way, but it looks awesome. The puzzles are so exactly what gets my neurons pumping. And I'm sure I understand neurons when I suggest that they pump. But like it's got a variety of them that interact with each other sometimes that I had to whip out the notebook for, and there were like 3 or 4 pages of notebook that were used up by the time I was done, which is uncommon even for the whip out the notebook games.
Yeah. We spoke about this a few weeks ago with the Golden Idol, like the Return of the Obra Dinn was such a unique experience because it required like, and I guess Animal Well is also one where it's like literally pen and paper out of game sort of figuring out had to be applied to the experience in game as well, and that's why I'm super keen to play more of this. I reckon I'll really like it too.
The sort of tone or like nature in which it tells the bits of story too reminded me of Kentucky Route Zero a little bit.
Right,
it's got that sort of feel to it. Like maybe not quite as good, but like just playing around in that field and doing it in such a engaging way, and just the quality of all of those puzzles was really high and really just locked in with me.
Nice.
So I had an awesome time playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and I recommend it.
Hell yeah, I'm going to play it.
And hey, if you like puzzle games, you might like our next category, which is Best Puzzle Game / Individual Puzzle. This one is sponsored by Famine again. A little bit of the old misdirect there, a bit of a puzzle as to what was going to happen.
Now, the ultimate puzzle game for this year was answering this question because it is tough. It's been a great year for puzzle games. Like I just mentioned, Indica has some really good puzzles in it. I've heard from a very reputable source that Lorelei and the Laser Eyes also has some great puzzles.
It's good ass.
But
that's where the camera is.
I mean, in a year when a Golden Idol game came out,
look, I think in terms of like, Lorelei making me whip out the notepad was awesome. I don't always like, yeah, that's always a great feeling.
Yep.
Animal Well having these puzzles that like go into the real world.
Yep.
And require abstract thinking and teamwork and stuff is so cool, but also kind of a bit further than I like to go.
Yeah, it's yes. If you might not have the time, you might not have the availability in terms of like, because a lot of this stuff was done on Discord with other people who are playing it at the same time, like strangers, and like if you're not tapped into that sort of ecosystem, if you're just a person who buys a game and is like, I hope I can figure this out myself because I enjoy doing that, it does preclude you from engaging with every aspect of it, which is a shame.
Was that... this is going to be the worst description of a title. The guy made Obra Dinn, how he did that Playdate game where you're on Mars or whatever.
Yeah, Mars After Midnight.
Did that come out this year, Mars After Midnight?
I think it might have, yeah.
It might have been... I thought it was last year. I could be wrong, though.
I might be wrong, too. Well, if it did come out this year, not really a puzzle game, but I'll shout it out here.
It came out in March this year. It came out on my birthday, 12th of March.
How about that?
And I did enjoy it. I did enjoy unwrapping that present.
I really enjoyed Arranger, the playing tile moving around thing where like the entire game is one. It's like doing an RPG thing. It's got like a little world that you're traversing around, but like all of it is a puzzle. There's no like walking around and now I'm looking at a screen where I'm doing a puzzle. Like the entire game is built around that puzzle mechanic, which I thought was really cool.
Right.
I don't think any of them were especially like, super difficult or anything, but I liked Botany Manor and some of the puzzles in that were a bit of fun. And also some of the shit in fucking Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Oh, yeah.
Having to get that new gesture that's in a random place, hey, spoiler, and then use it on some random statue is ridiculous, but I respect it.
Yep. That was sick. I mean, yes, there's a few of those in the FromSoft games, right? That I think, like, because I think, there was one in Elden Ring as well, like, specifically that. Like, do a gesture in front of a statue and go to a new area.
And I'll tell you, there's a couple in Indiana Jones that ain't too bad.
Hello.
But, yeah, far and away, Rise of the Golden Idol, pound for pound, is just, like, on another level, as the case of the Golden Idol was, when it just comes to really well thought out Obra Dinn style, just kind of complex but totally logical puzzles.
Yeah, a bit of deduction, bit of deductive reasoning. I also wanted to mention, Tommy, you played that game and enjoyed that game, Arranger. There was also a game that came out this year called Slider, which is not, I think, the entire map or the entire screen slides, but it's like the same philosophy, and it's this kind of cool, like, simplistic pixel art, which you might enjoy. I didn't play either of these games, but I heard about both of them and have got them both confused with each other. But they both came out this year, and apparently, they're both a good time.
Cool. Yeah, nice. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, my number 4 game of the year is, I would say there's an element of puzzle to it.
Okay.
My number 4 game of the year, Balatro. In the sense of like to really get through that, like whatever you want to call it, to the end, or to really be getting those high scores, you do kind of have to like break the game a little bit.
Yes.
And figuring out how to get these little, jokers kind of all interacting with one another in order to really get yourself into the like real high end of it. I'd say there's a degree of puzzling figuring out to that.
I feel like there's a second layer of the game you break through to when you realize how far you can take how those jokers interact with each other. Totally. That like feels great when you sort of breach that wall.
Yep. Are we going to talk about it later, or should we talk about it
now?
No,
I'm happy to talk about it now.
It's an honorable mention for me.
Yeah. I mean, just like it's the only game on this list that I own across multiple platforms.
Right.
So that should tell you something.
Yeah.
It dropped on the phone recently, and I was able to get it through Apple Arcade, and I just went, I do want this accessible to me at any moment of the day or on a flight. I mean, not a ton to say about it. Just a very, very simple game that is just executed on so well, and I can't remember. I feel like I saw some, or maybe I listened to a pod where they were talking about it, and they were sort of shitting on the music. I love the music in it. I just think like everything about it feeds into each other so well, and is just like, yeah, it's just so tight and so satisfying, and like, yeah, even if you're like, it's one of those games where even like not doing well at it is satisfying. Like losing and then just having to reset is like fine.
That's true. I don't remember a point where I was like, oh, God damn it. I fucked up that run, blah, blah, blah. And with the music, I definitely, like, I think that track that's in there is good. I do remember being like, wish there was another one. Might come on sometimes, but whatever. You can turn the volume down. And like all the sound effects of like the ding 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 ding, like all of that sort of slot machine stuff that's going on is so perfect.
Another fucking single person developed game. Featuring in like I've seen this in a lot of people's top 10 lists, a lot of best game of the year lists. It's great. It's very exciting, and I guess we're at that level of technological like accessibility where people can make, not necessarily graphically complex games, but conceptually super complicated and super satisfying to play. And honestly, I will say with my list, there were some I left off because I knew that they would be mentioned on other people's lists, because I feel like there was such a breadth of good games this year. Absolutely echo all of those sentiments. Balatro is super fun. I reckon I haven't got it on the phone yet because I don't want to spend all of my time playing Balatro on my phone.
I played a bunch of Balatro just on the computer there. And it just... I think it's great. It never gave me that feeling or whatever that I guess these other games did, but not through it being poor in any way. And like the Jokers have so much creativity and in what they're all doing. Like it's not just, this one's +5 or whatever. And the cool ways you can make them interact are awesome.
I guess I also didn't play more because the Joker is such a scary villain.
Yeah, the Joker is me, actually. That's what I've always said. Gate.
Shall we talk about my number 4 game of the year?
Well, what is it?
It's The Rise of the Golden Idol.
Yeah, nice. It's time.
It's time is it time to talk about it? We're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
It was 6 for me, so.
Yep.
I agree with you that it's sick.
Yeah, it's fucking great. Everything about the first game is still there, but it's improved upon. It's iterated on slightly. It's a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more of a clear and overt story that's being told, and it's being told in a. And it makes sense. The makers of this game are great writers. They are intelligent enough to come up with these really great puzzles that are all based on the specificity of wording. And it makes sense that they're also able to be like, well, let's use them words to make a good story.
It's actually pronounced pacificity.
I'm getting an incorrect on my case board.
Totally agree that like the how clever they are in terms of like every element of the game. Yeah, the fact that story kind of wraps around. And hey, let's say now, because it hasn't come up earlier, there might be some spoilers in this back portion here for some of these games, including for some of the Rise of the Golden Idol now, probably. Because, like, this isn't massive, but the way that the timing of all the events that you're seeing, the chronology of the stuff, the way that wraps around on itself is really cool in that game. And, like, I really enjoyed the different tone of story and the more kind of overt thing that it chose to do, as well as it splintering off and going into those side things for a bit, but that are still all wrapped in. That was really cool.
Their fucking mind map, thing of how every aspect of this game interacts. It's like an entire wall, I imagine.
I would love to see their cue card wall or whatever, their pin board.
But
also, the fact that the puzzles are distinct from the first game while still being exactly the same thing, and you don't feel like you're retreading ground is crazy. Yeah,
I love that. I enjoy the visual style. I think I enjoy it more than the first one, which is, absolutely a matter of taste. But I really like it, and I like the little bits of, because the first one is such a restricted art style based on the era that they were replicating. Sure. There's a bit more detail and there's a bit more character, I feel like, in this one, which probably helps when the story is a bit more complicated and there's more characters to sort of latch onto.
Yes, I certainly had an easier time tracking, I forget their names now, but like goofball guy who keeps getting promoted.
Yes.
Sort of hippie lady, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Yep.
They're all very distinct and distinctive and like to the, where you're just putting their names in the future cases where you're seeing them because you remember like this is, I forget their names now, but like Orville something, the guy with the glasses.
Yep. The art historian.
Yeah.
The fucking, all of the,
The lady who keeps being like, it should have been me as the boss. I'm the competent one.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, but I like this dipshit. The way it wraps up, the thing it leaves, the thread it leaves open for the DLC they've got planned for next year of the alien guy. It's just all, it's cool shit.
It's a really fucking good game. And yeah, I just 4 years ago, if you'd said like, hey, one of your favorite games, maybe ever, will be like a Mad Libs detective game, I'd be like, get the fuck out of my house.
Totally. This is one of like the heavy hitter series for me now. And it's like, it's just so well done.
I like to feel like a smart detective.
Fully agree.
That's what this game does.
It's nice to be able to do something other than just wear a fucking duster and look bad in a trilby. Speaking of trilbies.
Okay.
They're a fun hat, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe my most fun game of the year, even though it's not number one. Just the pure joy in this one that I think we'll probably talk about a bit later. My number 4, though, is Astrobot.
Woo!
Yeah.
Will we be talking about that later?
We be talking about it later.
Okay.
I thought we might be. But
all right.
That little robot knows how to have a good time. I'll tell you that much right in the meantime.
Yep. He knows how to shake his little fanny. That's for damn sure.
He'd be invited anywhere. Sick. Well, yeah, we'll talk about Astrobot in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, what would you say if we were to discuss some of the best stories and performances of the year?
I'd say that's a good thing to do on our Game of the Year episode.
Well, here we go. This is the category Best Stories and Performances presented by Tall Buildings. Tall Buildings. We love stories.
That's
just
good.
A bit of fun there.
Stuff.
Best
that's
performance was both of you not vomiting after that.
No, I liked it a lot.
Intended to. Wrapping these two in because we'd sort of talked about them, but like there's a couple. There's standouts of each this year. Who wants to kick me in the balls?
Oh, definitely me. I'm not sure where I want to start. Maybe performances, because I really thought that Still Wakes the Deep was really like heavily carried by its performances, and specifically a guy called Alec Newman plays the protagonist in that, and you never see his face. It's all first person, but you really get an incredibly, strongly detailed picture of who this guy is. Cool. It feels like this could be a character in, a documentary fucking touring, the Glasgow council flat areas. Like this is a real dude, and he just happens to be fighting against, a tentacle monster. But fantastic performance, and also I
would let the tentacle monster win.
Well, I mean, and that's something that you've got to work out. I'm not taking you for seafood meals anymore.
I'm losing. Oh, no.
I also wanted to shout out the actress who plays Senua.
Yeah.
Whose name, it's got to be listed somewhere.
Yeah.
Surely.
I swear she exists.
She's European.
She's definitely a European woman whose name...
Her name starts with an S, but I might just be thinking of Senua.
Melina Jurgens.
She
plays
thinking of Senua.
Senua, yeah. She's German. She's a German voice actor, and she fucking nails Senua. She did the first game as well, obviously, but these are her only 2 credits.
She's very good, and shout out to the tiny little cameras and blue dots or whatever they've got.
Yeah.
That managed to capture it too, like we were talking about earlier, because It's also, I think all of the actors in that game are good.
Yeah.
And to their credit as well, they've got the least room for error out of anyone. Like, they've got the least Vaseline on the lens.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You see every twitch and glance. But, yeah.
And they use it, yeah. I'll say, I think Troy Baker does a great job being Indiana Jones.
Interesting, because
near impossible task,
right?
Because he's got such a normal yet distinctive voice and manner.
Yeah,
but like, look, it's not a perfect impression. You can tell, especially because Troy Baker's voice has been in so many games. You can hear it coming through, But I think the important stuff of that character, he completely gets right. Like, the kind of gruff pointing stuff, that's all happening. The old-fashioned, Indiana Jones original whoa-whoa-whoas. The like, whoa, like all that stuff when he's like grabbing onto something, getting punched and being like, oh, okay. Like that sort of downbeat, like, I can't believe I got to fight this Nazi now. All of that stuff is really very good. I can't imagine doing... Like, unless someone was just doing an impression that I think would be the wrong move because you're just not getting the character out of it. I think this is just about as good a job as someone can do of portraying that character without being Harrison Ford.
Yep.
Or River Phoenix, I guess.
Sure. He is my
Was
preferred.
young Indiana Jones in the show.
Yeah. Any performances you'd like to shout out, Tommy?
Yeah, I think the Atlas do such a good job with their English voice acting casting.
Right.
Like, a game like that, you would think typically, well, obviously I'm going to play it in the Japanese because that's the original, and I think, I guess it is getting better now overall, but for a long time it was just like the English voice acting is always like pretty shitty, but yeah, I think in this is another one of their games where just like it's the English voice acting is so good as it is in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think they have a lot of like tough stuff to to deliver.
Sure.
And they just really do. It's not only the performances, I think it's also the direction has clearly helped this, but they just really do strike this tone of being pretty silly but pretty self-serious at the same time, and it never feels like too goofy or too kind of lame in how important they're treating it. And then the other side of the coin is the Japanese voice acting in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, specifically your main guy, he's just got so much personality and character, and especially like all of that coming through when it's in a language that you don't speak. Like, I think like seeing the text there and then hearing his like big performance and totally being able to know like which bit of the sentence he's delivering, you know what I mean? With like his emphasis and his the dynamic way he just like he's such a great performer, and like again like the tone of that different to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the tone of that game is just like completely silly. Even when it is being serious, it's in such a melodramatic way that just really helps like pull you in, and you just are like, you feel like you're just having, it's like the people who made it are having so much fun, and it's impossible to not be like, yeah, I'm along for this ride. Like, you get what you're doing. You're just wanting me to have a good time and be absorbed by this. And like, yeah, I love him.
Ichiban in particular, being such an over-the-top character that always seems like a person, though, even though he's like kind of so dumb or so ridiculous or so whatever. Yeah. But it never seems like, flanderized or like he's Kramer or whatever. Like he's But
he's grounded in this very like he's so moralistic, so he's always grounded in like he's always doing the right thing.
He's always earnest.
His friends, and so like even when he is being like such a cartoon, he is grounded in such this like extreme set of principles that most people would like to imagine that they have, so that makes him so easy to latch onto. He's like, no, we have to help this person, we have to look out for our friends. Like,
and that's all stuff that like in other things makes a character vanilla or boring or whatever that doesn't happen there.
Yeah. But he's just such an extreme version of it. So those are mine.
They're good
Should we move on to number 3.
I was going to say some story stuff as well, because we didn't touch on
narrative. Folded them in, remember?
Yeah. And like, obviously it makes sense that there'd be some games that have already come up.
Yes.
Still Wakes the Deep. The story is great, and you know, that ties into the performances. And Indica as well has a great narrative that's executed really, really well. And then it's like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has a great story, but it's
the cast.
Yeah,
like that's the element of that where I don't know if like the story or the storytelling or anything is like the thing, but like maybe the most likable and well done cast and like the best sort of version of them interacting and bantering and whatever. Like it doesn't get annoying, even though, like you were saying with the voice, there's so much room for putting a foot wrong with that, and like, and they don't.
And it's like, I guess it is. The story is also like an adaptation, so it's. And I was going to say it as well with Black Myth Wukong. Like, it's a twist on one of the oldest, written stories that exists. Like, it is Journey to the West, but it is a twist on it and a approaching it from a different angle, but like it's still really, really well done. It's not just a series of boss fights. And again, it's characters. Like they're such, interesting and like archetypical characters that are just done super well. And one of them's like a small warthog with a rake. And I mean, how can you go past that?
We'll talk more about Rebirth later in a little bit, but just quickly with the story thing as well, the stuff they are doing, like with Remake, where it's like the changes. I'm fascinated by them. I don't know what I think of them, and I'm very excited to land in the third one. And see how they land that thing. Just with the stories quickly as well. We'll talk about Metaphor, but it's pretty good. Lorelei had a good one. I think Hellblade 2 deserves a shout out for its like cinematic storytelling and stuff as well. Indiana Jones, same reason. Like
nice.
We'll have talked about this, and you guys will have played this. Do you care about something at the beginning of Indiana Jones for you in real life that would be kind of a spoiler of literally the first 10 minutes of the game? I'll say I think the first 10 minutes of the game are cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Rise
I
of
can't
the
believe
Golden
you drew
Idol.
on it like that.
And then, just to shout it out again, I really liked the very small, sweet story of Botany Manor when I played that earlier in the year, and it really surprised me. And it was just a story that is of the sort, like what you were saying with Still Wakes the Deep, you don't really get many games kind of doing, and it was really sweet and sad, but got me at the end. I thought it was great.
And also, like we just said, Rise of the Golden Idol. Great story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real good fun.
Hey, we're up to number 3. This is
number
the top
3. My number 3 game of 2024, Astrobot.
Hell yeah.
Mamma mia.
Wrong guy. That's the other one. Astrobot is so cool.
It's just fun. It's not really trying to break the mold too much, but it just is doing the thing that it's decided to do as well as it possibly can. I mean, it really, like I said before when we were talking about best looking games, it just looks so good. It's animated so good. It really does make me wish that Nintendo would have a console generation where they decide to just like pump out some like insane hardware and like what they would be able to do if they were working with a console that had the specs of the PS5.
I've actually heard a few leaks about the Switch too.
But yeah, I mean, this is just like the best Nintendo game that Nintendo haven't made. Like, obviously very influenced by all that series, but is still doing enough of its own stuff. And like, I've liked the other Astro games. I've always been a bit like not really won over by the character and the world and the design of him and everything. And for whatever reason, maybe it is just the repetition of it, of just this being like the third one. But this is the one that just really kind of won me over and justified it because this being the first, like, I mean, the VR one is a full game, but it is on VR hardware. This being the first, like, just true, straight down the line Astrobot platformer, but it still weirdly, a lot of it by this point feels very familiar, like the way that he sounds and moves, and
I think all the
things that
enemies,
the levels, and
the enemies are like becoming
trophies you're picking up of those guys. They all seem familiar.
Like I've seen them in other games before.
Yeah,
except Days Gone. Wait, no, the reverse. I
think
whatever.
Days Gone things is in there, but just the director was like, "Fuck that! They're making
That's
fun
right.
of me."
It was
the
in
guy
there,
got angry.
but he got angry. Yeah,
but yeah, just a game that is just, and the story is just stupid. The whole conceit is just like kind of pointless.
But even so, at the end when all your little bots are helping you out and they're all,
the finale is great. Yeah,
thanks, bots.
Just a game that just wants you to have just fun at every possible second.
It's the most like balls to the wall trying to have fun at all times game, because like those the sort of end of world levels with all the PlayStation stuff, it's kind of cheesy, but it's also super fun. Having Nathan Drake show up and then you're shooting during the level, seeing Aloy and shit. I don't really care that much about it, but it's great.
Yeah, doing the first one of them and realizing like, oh right, that's the little thing here. There's like a little special PlayStation treat at the end of each world, and then I was talking with Levins while we were both playing through it and being like, oh, I wonder what the next one, oh well, what's left? Well, surely God of War will be in there, and then the one that is what's it called, Loco Roco,
because I think they made that same as Ape Escape.
Yeah.
They've got like some
right.
The deck is weighted their way.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the PlayStation heavy hitters at this point are like, your God of War, your Horizon, but then those like really old school ones sneaking in as well. It's also it's cool to just see this like between like a lot of it really is just from the last few years, but like that PlayStation do have this kind of like enough stuff now to like go really into the legacy side of things, even though a lot of the stuff that you find in this game, the little like PlayStation themed bots that you find are like Street Fighter themed.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
I don't know that that's one of yours. That seems like a bit of a stretch.
But then
I
like the ratchets and clank and so on. Yeah.
It's a ton of fun, and like then it had its own creative ideas for like gimmicks for each of its own levels as well. Like it's just a great time. It's a total theme park that like, sure, they didn't invent the roller coaster, but I still had a fun time on it.
Yeah.
Stop buzzing my vibe, dude. I'm trying to eat a $60 hot dog here.
I think the mouse one and the like onsen one where you're the big sponge
are
probably up there in my two favorite 3D platformer levels of any game. And those two specifically, I mean, it is good when something just uses an idea and then moves on from it. But like those two in particular, I'm like, oh man, I would have loved another couple of levels of that. Like turning into the big sponge and just smashing everything down was so much fun.
Big singing tree, time casino.
Yep.
It's a good time.
One of those ones that I think I'll probably go back to every couple of years and just rip through it.
Yeah.
Well, a game that I haven't even finished yet is my number 3 on the list. It came up in our big games conversation. It's also the winner of a special category I've made just for this. It is the best game of 2024 with Dragon in the title. The nominees were Dragon Age, The Veiled Guard, Dragon Ball Sparking Whatever.
0.
0. Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D HD.
Yep.
Dragon's Dogma 2. And the winner, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Fucking great game. I love this franchise. I love the performances like we were talking about, but I just also love the sheer scope and size of it that also manages to be, like we were saying with Final Fantasy VII, super detailed, super fun. Everything's interactable. Everything's a mini game. The fucking food items you can buy are also fun and detailed. All of those like complex systems interact so perfectly. The characters are all incredible. Like There's just such a weird band of misfits. The Nunba, the homeless nurse, and fucking Adachi, the police chief, like all disgraced police officers. All of their fucking weird little backstories.
Taxi driver,
yes,
I love it. Also, too, JRPGs famously take a long time to get going, and that is true of the Like a Dragon Yakuza games. But what I love about this taking a long time to get going is that a lot of that time is introducing you to all of this side stuff that you then can do or not do. It's you're just getting into the quest, and then all of a sudden it's hey, now we're teaching you how to use Tinder in the game.
Yes.
Here's your weird version of Pokemon that exists where you collect fucking, I don't know, homeless men and make them fight for you. And so it's even though it is very stop-start, the fact that it's doing that, introducing you to new little weird things that are also unique and different and you can interact with or you can just completely ignore, it makes that sort of slow, drawn-out start way more enjoyable than when it's just, I don't know, the Atlas version of it where it's still successful in its own way because the writing is good and everything, but, as opposed to just feeling just let me play the fucking game. It's it's just throwing all these weird different things at you all in a row that just so all add up to you appreciating this bizarre tone and world that,
and then those things, are woven through and scattered through the rest of this huge ongoing melodrama. It's, international, it's hopping around places. You never really know what's going to happen next. There's bizarre cults popping up. There's, up and coming gangsters. There's a zone that no one's meant to go into. There's an island that you can turn into your own theme park and curate and plant shit and weed and
you can do crazy taxi.
You can do crazy taxi.
Uber Eats deliveries.
Yep. You can ride segways around, which happens in another game that came out this year. But
that's true. You're the Segway.
The combat.
We'll keep talking about this.
The combat's great. It's such a fun version of JRPG turn-based combat. And you just love the characters. You're so behind Ichiban. You so want to see him achieve his goals. And then also the big, dive into Kiryu and the sort of paying tribute to his legacy as a character, that previously led the entire franchise. It's just done super, super well. There's a fun level of, there's a genuine level of reverence, but also it's all delivered in such a fun and silly way that it's just really, really entertaining. And I'm I don't know, 30 something hours of the way through. And I've got multiple more of that to go, and it's it's great. It's also the best value for money game of the year. So that's
I didn't end up checking out any of that TV show. I heard it was not very good, and I would have loved it to be good, but it is. There is something about you you care about the characters, you care about the story. But it really does have to function within the world of a video game. A lot of everything that's happening is so video gamey. Yeah. In terms of how you interact with the world, how you do combat, the side things that you're doing, and they just do such a good job of having it be completely silly, but you still care about what's happening. And I feel to have a series where you're only focusing on the story beats without this colourful weirdness that you're able to lean into. It's a shame that there's not a way of pulling that off, but it sort of makes sense because part of what's enjoyable about it is that it just leans into the fact that it's a video game.
Yeah.
I want to play more of it one day. I played a bit. I wish I'd have played 7 too.
Yeah.
Hey. Sometimes in life, you got to spend heaps of time playing a different game, which I did. My number 3 game of the year for this year was Metaphor ReFantazio.
Woo!
Which I'm guessing we can talk about now. Yeah, that's. I've got the green light.
Mm-hmm.
Atlas, when you sink into it, and when they've got the characters there, I don't know. This one just got me. I don't think it's as good as Persona 5, but that's so good.
Yeah.
And this is different too, in interesting ways that I think worked for it. Like, it's really got this feeling of a continuous adventure that is different from the sort of stop-start kind of, hey, we're going to school, it's the calendar year, blah, 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 Persona. And I really liked that sort of just one long, all right, we got to do this. Oh, damn, now this has come up and da-da-da-da. It works really well. I think the characters are really great. I really liked that you kind of just have this, you're a team and there's not that weird, like, well, to get all of the abilities I want to get, I got to flirt with everybody over some time here. You know, not that that's a problem in those games. It's just that the tone of this, it works really well having everyone being like, because you're learning about these interesting stories with these people. In a different way to the Persona games, where it's less sort of intimate, but also more interesting in some ways, where like I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to say spoilery stuff for examples. You'll just have to take me at my word. The combat is super addictive. It's quick, it's snappy, it's easy to wrap your head around, but then it gives you enough to have to think about all the time that it's not dull. I think it does go on slightly too long, maybe. But I still got there with it. I think the designs and stuff are just as good as they do plenty of the time. I just really enjoyed the thing. I had a fun time playing through this ridiculously sized game.
Yeah, there just is something about how a lot of what they do, they do kind of do a lot of the same stuff, but they get that it's all the wrapping that makes it. Like, I mean, JRPGs are a genre that there seems to be a bit of a, like, probably more than any other genre. It's like, no, this is what it is, and it's rarely ever fucked with too much. I don't know why that is, but Atlas just really get like, yep, this is the traditional thing, this is how it's paced, this is the sort of stuff you do in it, but let's just make the menus look like a fucking $1 million when you do them.
And just like, I was interested in seeing the next thing every time I got to the end of a segment. Like, that's the main part of it, is that every bit left me wanting to do more of it, or do it again, you know? It's I don't think the breaking too much of a mold, even though it's a different setting and it's, you know, there are differences. I think it's very much in a mold, like you say, that exists, that Atlas has its own flavor of, where it's like, oh, well, you've got something you can choose to do in the morning and something in the night or whatever. But I don't know, it ain't broke yet.
Yeah.
For me.
Totally.
So I really enjoyed playing through Metaphor, to the point where it was my third favorite game of the year, I think.
Okay, all interesting.
Right. Hey, but I can never know.
Well, speaking of segues.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Yes.
What a moment it would be to ride around on a Segway in Hawaii or in Costa del Sol. What about the best moment of games this year presented by Minties, like in the 90s? Like when you'd watch funniest home videos. It's best moments of video games like these that you need video game Minties.
They discontinued Minties, didn't they?
Fantails. I think Minties are still around.
I think, yeah.
Really?
Fantails are definitely gone.
I might buy some Minties after this. Yeah, it looks like they're still for sale.
Even pretend advertising works.
Yeah.
I got a few moments here that I wrote down. Does anything spring to mind that you want to jump in with, either of you?
I mean... No. I do. No, I actually do. The like you said, the dancing lion boss in Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, is so fucking sick. That is that the first boss? That's the first boss of the DLC?
Yeah, at least the first like sort of intended progression one, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah, that's a hell of a moment. It's so as they do so well in all of their games, like presenting you with that first boss where you're like, how the fuck am I gonna beat this? And it's so like daunting and intimidating, and it's so cinematic. All of that stuff is done so well. That's awesome. And then obviously the moment where you finally beat it and you're like, I can do anything. It's that kind of feeling, which you were saying, Tommy, about some other game. Oh, Animal Well. You guys were saying with that moment of like, oh, I finally figured this bit out, and it's revealed and it's explained all of this other stuff. That is the kind of version of that, for combat that is just so satisfying.
I had an Elden Ring moment too that was like going to be a different moment for different people, but I think with that in particular, given that, as discussed, it is a DLC.
Yes.
Which
doesn't count.
The contractual, you can look through the fine print. There's nothing about it that's ineligible. It doesn't say anywhere that chimpanzees aren't allowed to play cricket. So, or whatever movie that's happened in before. Dogs and basketball.
Dogs and basketball. I would like to see chimp cricket though. Don Brad ape instead of Don Brad man.
Sure, yeah. Don Brad prehistoric man.
Yeah.
The moment when you realize, oh shit, they've made it fucking enormous again. Like,
yeah, sure.
I knew it'd be something, but given what the previous DLCs are comparative to their games in the FromSoft ones, it was another thing to realize the scope of what it was.
Right.
That I thought was very cool. Much like I thought when and by the way, spoilers, I thought when Animal Well turned on my printer and scared the shit out of me, that was so cool.
That is cool. I liked hearing about you being scared.
Yes.
I was
when that happened.
Like, genuinely a huge amount of chemicals went through my body.
Right.
Not even just adrenaline. I think there are other ones.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but that was... And just because it was late at night and I didn't expect a noise. But, Animal Well printing out a little rabbit thing for you to fold up and it's part of a secret in the game. Awesome.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep. One of mine would be the end of Astrobot, like the finale. I don't need the last bit to be the most challenging. I don't need it to be like some big... boss that really puts me on my ass. I'd much prefer the approach of it, and I think a lot of the 3D Mario games have done this well too. Just have it be a spectacle, like the end of Odyssey, where you take over Bowser and you're just charging through that car. Something that's just kind of relatively on rails. That is just not. I like the last bit of a game to be not the most challenging bit, but just like the most fun. Here you go, you've earned your thing. Like like the way that final boss battle is like so fun and creative and interesting, and then you're flying around. It just does this really good job of just being like, hey, you've made it through to the end of the game. Your reward is just the bit of the game that is probably the most visual spectacle of the whole game.
And the music's pumping, and then Astrobot sacrifices Astrobot's self, and then all the other bots are like, we'll rebuild him. Oh, you damn bots. I can't believe you got me, Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, I like the final bit to just be like, give me a big smile on my face, just like, I finished a game.
It totally works sometimes. I wrote down ending as well for Astrobot, and also just running around and punching all the PlayStation characters and seeing what they do. I really liked that, because it was each of them was like a really thoughtful little thing to do with that character.
One of my my favorite moments of the year, and this isn't within a game, but the moment when Nintendo announced an alarm clock.
Yeah.
And then two other things that weren't the Switch 2.
It's pretty crazy.
The start of anytime you play Queen's Blood, that music kicking in.
Oh, sure.
Queen's Blood was
Rebirth
good.
Is fucking awesome.
If we'd have had a best game within a game section, I think Queen's Blood would have maybe taken it for me.
Right. I think Dondoko Island would pip it for me, but great year for games within games.
I wrote down in Rebirth when you first have to take that dog home or whatever, that Bow Wow Wow song.
It's just so good.
The amount of care put into that game, like, really was driven home with that it's just this must have taken so long to record. I assumed they'd use it once, but it does come up twice in that game. But even so,
there are so many great little moments in that are like kind of weirdly touching, and then like when you're on that boat and you all split up, and then you link up with Barrett again, and he's dressed in like a full sailor outfit. Just him just appearing in the full fucking Donald Duck getup really got me.
The whole like ending boss fight sequence of that game is cool too. One of the worst moments was when they did poor descriptions of restarting that, and I restarted the whole thing again. But that just like bombastic, sort of like the Astrobot thing, but it was kind of tough. But just let's do everything. Let's go crazy. Finding the first good game that you love in UFO 50 is one for me. Digging through that thing and being like, this is interesting, and then hitting a game where you're like, oh shit, I'm actually really liking this. That was cool.
I'll just pretend that this is the whole game, and like this is now a thing that I love.
Balatro, the first time you get like an enormous score and crack that wall. Of like, oh, I can break this. That was awesome. And Tekken 8's ending was ridiculous too. I wrote down there. I think that's all the ones I could remember.
Yeah, nice. I think I'm happy with that. There's probably more that are like spoilers and stuff that specifically are so good that you don't maybe want to,
First few minutes of Indiana Jones are cool.
Okay, and thanks for spoiling it yet again.
Not to give too much sizzle. You know what else is cool? The number 2.
Whoa!
My number 2 game of 2024, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. We just talked about it, but yeah, just extremely my shit.
Yeah.
They did it again. Great that they shifted up the location. All the stuff that I really liked about the previous one, but, you know, cool, interesting, different location. Great characters, interesting story, mechanically great. Little bits and pieces tweaked from even just the thing of like in the previous one, the like environmental damage that you could do in combat was sort of almost a bit random. But and actually having it be something that you could kind of properly plan and work out how to use in this one makes a huge difference.
Was there more moving around as well within the combat arena?
I think it was just like the picking up, the like using, like a bike or a bollard or whatever to beat someone with. I think it was a little bit at random. Like if you happen to be near it, you would do it. But in this one, you can position yourself.
And it's like an on-screen like prompt now as well, isn't it?
And you can like line people up to like smash them into each other or like hit them onto a bonnet of a car or whatever. I think it just would happen every now and then, sort of by chance in the previous one. But like actually building it into, like again, RPGs never really stray too much outside the constraints, but just when you get like a little thing like that where you've got like the timed button presses in the Mario RPGs, just having a little bit more like... a little bit more to do rather than just selecting an attack from a menu.
It was like
feel a bit more immersed in it.
A halfway towards like, I don't know, Mario and Rabbids type of thing.
Yep.
And you can block. You could block, I think, every attack or almost every attack as well just by hitting the block button at the exact right time, which is also a great thing to keep you engaged in turn-based combat. Even on the defense.
I loved it. There's something about this, the whole package and tone of this that just is really right in the sweet spot for me.
Well, Infinite Wealth, Tommy loves you more than I do. So...
or loves one and loves his... you love number 1 and 2 more than Tommy loves his number 1, and you both love Like a Dragon equally.
Well, that could be true. That could be true.
I have a lot of love to give me because I didn't get myself trying to get that out.
My number 2 game of the year, coming up with the silver medal. It's a little monkey man named Black Myth Wukong.
Woo!
Fucking loved it. Such a good combat system, so Moorish, so like Souls-like. One more go at this fucking boss and I'm gonna get him this time. But like, yeah, incredibly visually stunning, creative, beautiful world, great little fucking biomes, climbing mountains, going through deserts, like gorgeous, detailed jungles and forests. And I'm a little monkey man with a stick. It's like, there's not a lot I want more out of life than that.
You could play cricket. Yeah, this is definitely one that like just didn't work out for me to be able to play as much of it as I would have liked to.
Yeah, I think you'll really, really get into it. It is the sort of Stellar Blade, but better. You know, it's like it has the combat, it has the world, it has the visual detail, but it also has this fun, over-the-top story that is, you know, obviously it is like deeply, entrenched in myth and legend, but also like a sick overall narrative with, great fun, absurd characters that, fill out this cool, like, God of War. It's basically, I think I mentioned maybe when I played it, like, it is God of War, but in Chinese myth. Like, that is what you're dealing with. It's a character who's, like, reckoning...
God of the art of war.
Yeah, I don't know if that has any basis in history or anything else.
I've read one book, and I know that it does, and it just so happens to be.
Well, surely if you've read that book, you should know that retreating is often wiser than going on the defense.
I didn't read the whole thing.
But and I haven't quite read the whole Wukong yet. I'm at like the second or third last boss, and it does get quite difficult, but man, it is a fucking great game. It's very, very... It has like all this hidden stuff and side stuff and optional stuff that I just ended up doing because I wanted to, you know, get as powerful and also as... I wanted to see all of these cool little areas and temples and side bits and like weird animals and it's a fantastic game and I'm glad that it got a lot of plaudits and kudos as well because it wasn't like a well-known developer, it wasn't an established franchise or anything, but it seems to have really broken through and people love it.
The words available for people have said good things about this are so weird. Plaudit. Kudos. What a weird group of words. Maybe I'm just uncomfortable with them because of attachments to the concept.
They both sound like maybe like Yiddish words. Plaudits, definitely. Anyway, I agree they're silly sounding words, but what a good game. Black Myth Wukong.
I'm going to get back to that one. And I think we'll probably talk about my one next, because my number 2 game of the year is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah. That's still to go on my list. I wonder where it could be placed.
Yeah.
It's good as hell. We'll find out why very shortly.
Hell yeah.
Because first, we've got to do our final award category. Mm-hmm. And it's the most important one.
Oh, yeah.
The Austin Powers Memorial Funniest Game to Pretend We Want to Be Game of the Year Award.
Yeah.
Yep. Austin Powers Pinball Memorial.
Austin Powers Pinball Memorial.
Yes.
Well, Austin Powers himself is dead.
Yeah.
I don't think he's coming back. Like, do you think there'll be another one?
I guess he's dead, but Austin Powers Pinball, you can still play it if you want.
If you can find it.
That's true. It hasn't been delisted.
Someone did bring a copy of it to an event we were at once, and we all signed it, so...
That's right.
It's out there.
Yeah, this is... Look, I don't have that many for this. I'm not that funny. I don't know how to do it. Suicide Squad.
I've got one.
Mm-hmm.
Funko Fusion.
Sure.
That would be funny.
Imagine
that would be
if
a
that
funny
was Game of the Year.
Yeah, Funko Fusion.
My one would be Super Dassilo Land.
Oh!
It would have been very funny if I had gone all the way through this list and put my own game at number 1. I do feel like when Bart loses the school election by just not voting for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did toy with that. I'm like, that would be funny to see if I could just if I could get away with this.
Yeah, because then you could market it as Game of the Year.
Get right to the very end without you guys realizing that was what I was doing. If I had gone through all of the other big games, and you're going like, what's he gonna have at number one? Like,
if you want to do it, you
Yeah.
can put those wreaths on the box.
That's true.
It would be even funnier to do it after having said all of that as well.
Yeah. If anything, you're only making it more funny.
Yeah.
You gotta
I
cut
do
it
the
out.
thing where it's like Chemist Warehouse has like, are we Australia's best chemist and like cheapest chemist, and are we is really small, so I put like game of the year, but then really small, that it would be a funny joke to say that it was game of the year.
I guess like, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because it is game of the year for a year, probably.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
Red Dead
it would have
Redemption
been.
2, but they just didn't come out this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we've done that category justice.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's nothing funny. Well, no, there actually is funny stuff in it. But what's no laughing matter is my number one game of 2024.
Oh, wait.
That game.
Wait.
What?
Wait.
Ben's
wait.
got another one.
I forgot to name my best DLC of the year.
Oh,
It's Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree.
interesting. We'll talk about that later.
Okay,
Well-
sorry to interrupt.
My number one game of the year, the DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Now
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Snap.
nice.
That's mine. It's number one, boys.
I knew when Ben and I were at the pop-up cafe in Tokyo, drinking a cloud-themed tea together,
Yep.
and I was getting my 8th coaster of. Who did I get again?
You got rude.
Yeah,
a bunch, I
rude.
think.
I
The
got
fact that
rooted.
they even had a rude coaster, let alone
Yeah.
multiple.
I know.
I got frog sacked in Tokyo. That was when I knew that this was going to be a fucking hell of an experience.
Hey.
Yeah.
What a game.
I would argue, some people would argue that technically it's all of our game of the year, depending on what you consider to be a full game. And you could comfortably, if you wanted to, have Indiana Jones and Animal Well take up spots 9 and 10 on my list if you considered my game of the year to be a DLC. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is so good. Hey,
It's so fucking good. We've like the fact that we've spoken about it in I think every like serious previous category of performance, art direction and graphics, music, narrative, like
funniest game to call game of the year.
funny.
'Cause
That
it's-
is a game that featured Dragon in the title. Don't know how it made it into that one. Maybe a bit of payola, but and also scope as well. Like it featured in the big game category. Like it's just the best at everything.
It's crazy.
And especially like it's a part 2, and we'd all played the part 1.
Yep.
And thought, and it's a remake as well. Like you thought you knew what you were in for, but it still managed to be so surprising in spite of like all those factors.
And it's
just
like
the sheer scope of it.
None of it should make sense on paper for how good it is. Yeah, because it's a remake. It's like a direct sequel that's kind of not doing anything, or you would assume wasn't doing anything new.
Right.
And it's like this big budget flagship AAA thing, but it has then, like you might not expect, the creativity of a game that doesn't give a shit whether it appeals. You know what I mean? That it's just having fun and trying things
These
out.
sorts of things tend to be very like corporate led and not really take risks. But this, really does.
It's because we live in the era of the nostalgia, remake as well, which can often be a cash grab or just done in a really misguided way. Like think of all the fucking movies that it's like. This isn't why people liked Ghostbusters. What the fuck are you doing this for?
Or even if it's just like a competent one, like that Dead Space remake.
Sure.
By all accounts, absolutely good.
Yeah.
But I didn't really care because I had played that there was nothing there for me. And this is completely the opposite.
Yeah.
And is just, crazy big, unbelievably creative the whole way through. Like keeps doing things that are surprising I played somewhere around 70 hours of it and didn't do everything.
Right.
Looks incredible, even though like the sort of performance mode was a little fuzzy. And I played it on the 30 frames, whatever mode. I didn't really care. It looked
same.
good and it was fine.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and there's like that red talking cat, and he is fucking a pisser.
That guy's a bro.
You run your little chocobos around, and then like very, very late into the game, you get a fucking Jeep. Like it just the amount of stuff that it is throwing at you so deep into the game is
By the
crazy.
way, the ocean was there the whole time, you motherfucker. Go sail around in it right at the end.
Yeah.
And like the stuff they do differently and weirdly compared to the original, and the stuff that deviates and makes it not a direct remake, is so weird and interesting at the very least. Like, I like I said earlier, I'm fascinated to see where it goes in the third one, and even if it's all a bit off the rails and doesn't make sense or whatever, I don't really care because there's so much that's good, and the characters are so well done. For as like cartoonish and obnoxious as they could be in less capable hands, they work super well.
Yeah, big one for Zack heads as well. If you liked seeing him for 15 minutes in the original game.
The Zacksters have been eaten this year. The combat is so fun.
Yeah.
It's the like perfect kind of version of this thing, like you were saying, Tommy, of like how JRPGs kind of have this thing, and a lot of them do similar things, and you've got your kind of turn-based ones like Metaphor, but you've got your sort of like a dragon and whatever. There are some that have branched into the real time, especially with Final Fantasy 16 last year. The Rebirth coming out and being like, no, we're still good at that. Like Final Fantasy can still have like it was okay, the like real-time combat stuff in 16, but this is just like so fun the whole time.
That perfect balance, really, like, the pausing, the choosing the stuff, then also like I feel like increasing or maybe creating for this game the synergy stuff, that becoming a full, like a separate little mechanic that you can monitor and take like heaps of advantage from if you use it right.
The way that
it also does a really good job of like kind of making you use everyone in your party at certain points, but without it being like a lot of RPGs do that where they're like, oh, we're trapped. It's just got to be these two that come and find us. And it does that a lot. Like the bit where Cloud and a couple of others like run off into that bit and it's like, you guys wait here, and then they're in danger. So then it's like you then just go and do the same traversal, but with like the other three. It's like, oh, we got to go find them. But it gives you chocobos for that bit, which it didn't in the bit where you went originally, and like it just is like, oh, cool. I have to like learn how to play this in a bit of a different way now because everyone has such a different range of moves. There's really like no crossover between any of them, really.
The bit where you have to go off and be, and I never know how to pronounce it, even though they say it out loud in this game, Katsith. The bit where you have to go off and just be him for a while made me realize I have no idea how this guy works, and I had to learn it.
And even, I mean, it does try and do, this is the thing about it does try and do so much, and it often, because there's little bits in it that you're only doing for a short space of time, there is that kind of immersion breaking thing where all of a sudden it's like, here's how you control this bit. And it sometimes, I think, maybe to its detriment, where not everything that it's doing is entirely successful all the time, because there are these little bits that, but also I would rather them be in there than not be in there. Like all the fact that it's all in there just really does add up to like what makes it so enjoyable.
I think you could argue that the pacing of the sort of story and everything sometimes suffers from the same thing, but I didn't mind. But just if you were really looking at it through a magnifying glass.
And I guess this is the case with everything, I guess. If you're not enjoying the main thing it's doing, then you will also probably pick up on those smaller things as well, and they'll probably grate on you a bit more. But because I think, we all just had so much fun with the game in general and what it was attempting and pulling off, we were, I think, not bothered by those things.
I mean, I liked most, and there are a couple of little side things where like I had to move a chicken in an annoying way. I can't remember exactly how they work, but I remember being pissed off at a chicken. And like a lot of what you were saying about like a dragon before, of like it's goofy in the right way. It's having fun. It's being silly. But it works.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that I felt was really lacking in 16 was just for me, it got dull because there was none of that, like...
personality.
16 was a fine game, but in terms of Final Fantasy, it's like the thing that's always drawn me to it is that there's like There's a couple of weird little incongruous elements that don't look like they belong in that world as it's designed. You've got a little talking cat, or you've got a big chicken that you're riding around on, like those kinds of things that just that seem like they don't quite fit, but they somehow do work. Whereas 16 just went full on medieval dragon fantasy without any weird little talking duck or anything like that.
Looks so good, design wise and visual wise. Just every element of it is pretty much like as far up there as you can get.
Yeah.
It's a good ass game, but in my opinion, not as good as the full game released this year named. Look, this was my favorite thing I played this year. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Yeah.
It's the thing I couldn't get out of my head. It's the thing that, like, I just got the most into. It's so good. And yes, it is a DLC, but it is so big. And I was so impressed with how they were able to use the exact same stuff and do the same thing again. And like I was saying with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like on paper, it's like, it's a DLC for this thing that was so fully explored in original Elden Ring that how could they make it feel fresh? And they do.
Yeah.
It's so big, you could almost call it a double DLC.
I guess if you wanted to, that's what's coming up on bloody Stellar Blade, man. But like, it just is going for it and has that same spark and inventiveness somehow. And it's so impressive that it's able to come up with new ideas for environments that will surprise you, new ways for stuff to pop up that will surprise you, like new weapons to use, new enemies and types of things to do, new, like the more vertical layout of the environment gives you a new way to explore. It's crazy.
Yeah. And again, incredible bosses, great characters. The challenges were there. They were like, I think they figured out a really good way to manage the difficulty and all of that stuff with the the little shadow tree fragments and like all of that stuff. I think worked really, really well.
Yeah.
And then like great new areas, super well designed, fun, big fucking dragons and shit to fight.
I wished I'd have had more of it at the end. Like, I will say there's like some bits, especially towards the end, that it seems like they ran out of a little bit of time on. Like, there's a couple of like pretty major bosses that don't really have like a cutscene like a lot of the bosses do.
Yeah, true.
And Radahn, again, spoilers, was fucked initially, and they did sort of change that. But also that I beat him as that, and it was really hard, but I still mostly had fun doing that. And it just is... It's just a really satisfying game. If it gels with you, it's one of the most like fulfilling games to play. It just really gives you that big tick feeling. Yeah.
Look, don't tell anyone, but it was actually my favorite game of the year.
If DLCs are included in the rules that we make up.
It's so fucking good. It just is a testament to how good they are at making games to have somehow genuinely one-upped what might be the best game of all time.
It's crazy. And if you look at the Elden Ring and its DLC now as a package, which they are, fully a set, that you get into the DLC pretty naturally from the main story and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That's a hell of a thing.
That's pretty fucking... That's an 11 out of 10. In old Spinal Tap terms. I don't know how you get better than that. It's
I guess Spinal Tap would call it a 12 because like 11 was the top of their thing, but it's better than 11.
Yeah, true.
So Spinal Tap's 11 out of 10 would be a 12 out of 10, I suppose.
It goes up to... This one goes up to 12.
Holy shit. That's too loud. Couldn't you just make 11 louder? And
I wonder if this won Best Game of the Year at the Game Awards that happened 2 weeks ago.
It's weird that we already know all of that stuff. By the time this is out. And also sort of weird in terms of the times and the order in which we are recording these. It's like, this will be the last one that I'm on for people listening. But in terms of recording, we're doing a couple more. So
yeah, you're gonna after this one, you're gonna hand in your badge and gun, but then
just be ill-equipped for the rest of the crimes I have to solve.
Yeah,
we're then gonna give them back to you
Well, we're going to have to give him like a visitor pass to get into the police station.
I honestly don't think having to keep my gun in a locker is the worst idea to apply across the board even.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
true. That's true.
Sure.
So I have to imagine how I'm going to feel. But like, yeah, a couple of things that I might have already said, like when I told people a couple of weeks ago that, you know, wrapping up. For me, firstly, you two are keeping doing it, and I wish you all the best, and you have my full, not that you need it, my full like blessing and all of that. And like, huge thank you to both of you for all the work over like such a long time.
Yeah.
Means a ton. And also, of course, means so much to me in a way that like, I tried to think of some ways to say it, can't. People listening to me, holy shit. What a thing.
Yeah.
Can't believe it. So yeah, thank you for that. I'll be doing other stuff one day. I'm not evaporating. I'm not dying. Mm-hmm. And if I evaporated, I would die. I'm willing to bet.
True. That is fact.
Even Alex Mack,
Yeah.
the only person in history capable of evaporating.
Yeah, if she got boiled away, she'd be done
That's
for.
how you beat her.
Yeah. I'm glad you covered that in your farewell statement.
Yes, I will be doing other stuff.
Alex
So come check that out one day. I'm gonna have like a link in the description for this, with like a link tree where I've set up a little mailing list. That might be the easiest way that you can just, if you want to sign up for that, I'll tell you if I'm doing something interesting. You can still listen to Ooh Spooky. I'm doing that for the foreseeable, and Instagram. I'm on. If I'm doing something, I'll post things here, and I set up a Blue Sky. I don't know whether or not that'll probably be the mark that makes it stop overtaking anything. But yeah, go have a look at just follow my Instagram. That's probably the easiest thing. But that link tree has like the mailing list is something I'll use for whatever it is in the times ahead. But yeah, keep listening to this because I think Ben and Tommy are gonna have a bloody good time without the old ball and chain around, eh? Wish I hadn't said that as one of the last things I'm going to...
We got some big plans for the future. We've been talking about getting an ostrich puppet in here to fill the void.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how an
Adam.
ostrich is going to use a puppet without any hands, but good luck.
Thanks for everything over the 9
years? Almost a decade.
Yeah. If you include the episodes we sort of skipped early on, it's probably a pretty even 9.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm sure I speak for all the listeners as well when I say we'll miss you.
It's weird too because they'll have said stuff by now in real time, but I haven't had a chance to see it yet because it doesn't exist in current time. So, you know, I assume thank you for all of those. I hope kind words. But hey, if everyone's been like, finally, then I don't know. Let's pretend I reacted to that.
I don't know if the mic's picking this up, but my dog is currently giving you a 10-gun salute. So that's something.
Yes. Thank you, Knox. It's been... it won't be the same without you, I think it's fair to say. It's been an incredible run. It's been such an easy and fun thing to do for work. And for fun with you. It's yeah.
And yeah, I hope that doesn't change and like continues to be the case with you two going forward.
Yeah.
But you'll still be talking from my lawyers.
We'll still be talking about Nintendo Switch 2 leaks.
Even after it's formally
yeah.
That would be a great bit. We just pretend we've not seen the news. We're in like the console's been out for 6 months and we're like, I mean, this is getting fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I tell you what, and like, look, I don't know if I'd have said this earlier. Not like, you know, not a decision I made lightly, and lots of, you know, stuff I'll miss. Obviously, seeing Switch leaks and having to be like, yeah, we'll talk about that. Getting to see next time I see, hey, new Switch leak, and being able to go, yeah, all right. that'll be nice.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, hell of a year.
Yeah.
For games, for me personally, some I reckon all-timers in that list. I think Like a Dragon and Rebirth are up there as like the most enjoyable times I've had with games. They'll stay with me for a long time. Something like Balatro will just continue to be in my rotation for years to come. I think it's going to be one that I, you know, pick up on a flight when I feel like I've, you know, a bit tapped through everything else. Yeah, bit of a cool, you know, I feel like, yeah, from like 4 down, we all had such completely
that's
different
true.
lists. But
yeah.
And I mean, we'll do, Ben and I are going to do our 25 preview will be coming out. Well, next week.
Yep.
But you have to assume that we'll be getting a new fucking console next year, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
If patterns continue, nah.
Well, yeah.
That is going to do us for another episode and for another year of Filthy Casuals. Thank you for listening. We will see you... Oh, Merry Christmas, by the way. We will see you in... We will see you in 2025. And as we say here at the end of every episode of Filthy Casuals...
Brother, what if Mario real life, though? Like, did you actually imagine that at any point?
Fuck.
During
Mario.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Luigi get iPad?
For real, though, thank you so much, everybody.